Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Hogwarts. I really didn't want to be the Dark Lord. Chapter 101. Now Shah-Ji's situation is actually a bit embarrassing. Especially when Hermione and Cassandra are there. But Shah-Ji is just a thick-skinned person. As long as I am not embarrassed, then the embarrassing one is someone else. After lying in the school infirmary for another day, he was officially discharged from the hospital. Because Harry wasn't seriously injured, he didn't miss the last Quidditch match. Harry led the Gryffindor team and directly beat Crow to the ground. For the remaining days, Shah-Ji spent most of her time in her suitcase. This semester, he spent a lot of time communicating with Dumbledore, Voldemort and that Mr. G. As a result, Shah-Ji obtained a lot of valuable magic knowledge. He sorted and summarized these things in the suitcase, and finally put them in his receiving ring. Many of these materials are too dark and must not be shown to others, and those materials that can be seen by others are placed in the small building by Shah-Ji, so that people in DA can read them in the future. After Shah-Ji told Harry about it, Hermione became a frequent visitor to Shah-Ji's suitcase. She said that she came to see Shah-Ji's mysterious magic handwriting, so Shah-Ji didn't care. It's just that when Shah-Ji was studying soul magic, he always felt that Hermione, who was sitting on the side, was peeking at him. But every time he raised his head, Hermione was always reading a book, maybe because it was a little hot, so her face was always a little red. Shah-Ji couldn't see anything unusual, so she didn't care. Shah-Ji, who was just obsessed with research, didn't notice that the magic book in Hermione's hand stayed on the first page for a long time. Time passed quickly, and finally it was time to announce the final results. Of course Shah-Ji was number 1. He got a pass in all subjects, even potions class was no exception. Cassandra and Hermione tied for second. They were all surprised that they didn't get 0 in one subject. Harry and Ron also passed the exam with high marks. Tonight, it's time for the year-end dinner. When Shah-Ji came to the auditorium, the entire auditorium was decorated with green and silver representing Slytherin. Without a doubt, the Slytherins won the House Cup this year. Ron sighed, if only we hadn't been deducted 100 points before. After hearing this, Harry felt a little sad. Yes, otherwise we would be the champion. Don't worry, you won't be disappointed. Shah-Ji walked towards Gryffindor's long table with a smile. Harry and Ron looked at each other suspiciously. Harry suddenly said excitedly, Shah-Ji's words will usually come true, maybe there will be a real surprise later. Shah-Ji walked to the long table, ignored Cassandra's staring eyes at him, and sat directly beside her. Cassandra pouted, ready to change seats, but she grabbed her hand. What's wrong with you? Cassandra, are you sick and not feeling well? I'll go to Professor Snape to give you some magic medicine. I know him pretty well. HMPH, you're the only one who's sick. I'm fine. Cassandra turned her face away, not wanting to talk to Shah-Ji. Cassandra, why are you angry? Are you angry with me? Angry? How could I be angry? You are a great hero who saves the beauty. It's too late for me to worship. How can I be angry with you? Facing Cassandra's yin and yang aura, Shah-Ji looked at her with a sad face. I knew you wouldn't forgive me. Shah-Ji stood up, sadly, and wanted to sit down next to Harry. Cassandra's heart softened again. Shah-Ji at this moment is so lonely and helpless in her eyes. Then Cassandra began to reflect, am I really right to be angry with him? He obviously did nothing wrong, he sacrificed himself to save others, and bravely saved a life in front of Voldemort. What a noble act. Why am I angry? Is it because the person he saved was a girl? But, isn't it that I am angry that he disregards his own life? It should be, yes. From this point of view, Shah-Ji did nothing wrong. Why should I be angry? Who am I to him? I am. Well, I shouldn't be mad at him. Cassandra's face was blushing, and she grabbed Shah-Ji, who was about to leave. Sit down. Where are you going? Shah-Ji said, sadly, didn't you break off friendship with me? Who broke up with you? I'm not angry. Why don't you laugh when you're not angry? Aren't I just laughing? Cassandra pulled the corner of her mouth with her hand. But Shah-Ji still looked at her with sadness. Okay, I'm not mad. You don't go. You look like nearly headless Nick right now. Cassandra sighed. Shah-Ji immediately became happy. Great. You didn't break up with me, we are still best friends. Suddenly, Shaji found another person sitting beside her. Hermione smiled and said, "What's so happy about it?" Hiss. Shaji gasped. Shaji suddenly felt that the air around him froze. Hermione was sitting next to Shaji generously, discussing the content of the exam questions with Shaji, as if she didn't care about Kashandela, who looked a little unhappy beside Shaji at all. Anyway, if you say you don't like Shaji, then it's always okay for me to be close to Genji. Hermione's heart went dark. Then Shaji felt that her foot was, inadvertently, stepped on by Kashandela. Another year has passed. Dumbledore began to deliver a cheerful speech from the stage. Before I indulge in these delicacies, I must trouble everyone to listen to an old man's cliché. Just like the self in the previous life, listening to the school leader's speech before the holiday. Obviously, I have already flown back home in my heart, and flew back to my beloved game console, but I still have to listen to the leader's speech. Fortunately, Dumbledore's speeches were usually not long. After talking on the phone, Dumbledore started the Academy Cup award ceremony. The Slytherin guys started yelling excitedly, of course. Plus this year, they have won the championship for the 7th time in a row. However, I have to add a few things that happened recently to the score. Dumbledore gasped. The people on the Slytherin side fell silent immediately, they had a bad feeling. Snape frowned, looking at Dumbledore as if he knew what he wanted to do. He turned his gaze to Harry, as if wondering if his next self would have a chance to deduct points from Potter. The next episode, similar to what Shaji knew, Dumbledore added 50 points to Ron and Hermione each, and then added 60 points to Harry, who bravely fought Voldemort. Because Neville has not been deducted points, the current Gryffindor has actually returned to the top of the list. Cheers shook the entire auditorium, and Hufflepuff and Lawenkelluo didn't want to see Slytherin win again. So when they saw Slytherin lose the championship, they all cheered together with the students of Gryffindor. Harry hugged Ron excitedly, and shouted, "Look! Let me just say that Shaji's words are very effective." "Hush, everyone." Dumbledore's voice drowned out the cheers in the Great Hall. "I have one more person to add." At this moment, all eyes were on Shaji. The story of Shaji blocking the death curse for a classmate also spread throughout the school. Everyone looked at him with admiration. Not everyone could calmly face the death curse. Yes, when seeing a friend in a fatal crisis, Shaji rushed forward and blocked his friend with his own flesh and blood. What I want to say is that this is no longer Shaji did this for the first time. I have seen many people who sacrifice their lives for righteousness, and I have also seen many people who sacrifice themselves to save others. They are all people of noble character. Shaji was a little restless now. The old man was going to praise him to the sky. Stop boasting, if you praise me again, I will think you are holding a memorial service for me. For this reason, I decided to reward Shaji with 200 points. In fact, at this time, it doesn't matter how many points you add, since Shaji is also a Gryffindor anyway. Gryffindor was already a champion. Everyone gave Shaji warm applause, and even Malfoy clapped his hands reluctantly a few times. Then, the decoration of tonight will be slightly changed. Dumbledore clapped his hands, and the Slytherin decoration on the scene immediately changed to a bright red and gold theme. The long table of Gryffindor was once again a sea of joy. When it was time to eat, a lot of his favorite food suddenly appeared in front of Shaji. Dumbledore winked at him from the podium. Shaji happily took Hermione and Kashandela to taste these delicacies together, compared to the regrettable delicacies in England. How can the food that Shaji likes be unpalatable? These delicacies instantly conquered the stomachs of the two girls. I can make all these dishes. If you like it, I will make it for you in the future. Shaji happily stuffed her mouth with food. Hermione and Kashandela glanced at each other, then looked away from each other, and did not respond to Shaji's words. As if overnight, their wardrobes were fully equipped. Their luggage was packed, and the little wizards excitedly pushed their luggage and headed for the Hogwarts Express. Everyone was chirping excitedly. They were all discussing what to do and where to go during the summer vacation. But they all have their own destination, which is to go home. At this time, Shaji felt a little lonely suddenly. He thought of the Mirror of Erised and his family. Everyone else can go home, but what about me? Shaji can't help but feel a little sad. Ahem. Kashandela stopped beside him and coughed twice. My parents miss you very much. Do you want to come to my house as a guest? Shahji saw Kashandela's expression of pretending not to care, and couldn't help laughing. Are you sure your father really misses me? Shahji knows that I still remember Mr. Worley's resentful eyes. Welcome to my house as a guest, Shahji. Hermione said suddenly. You saved my life, and my parents want to thank you in person. Shahji took a deep breath, looked at Kashandela, and then at Hermione. Choose one of the classics. Can this be chosen? This cannot be chosen. Actually, I want to invite you to my house this summer vacation. Shahji said with a smile. Choice is impossible to choose, children make choices. Your home. Kashandela was puzzled. When did Shahji have a home? Could it be that she went to an orphanage? Although Kashandela was puzzled, she didn't ask such a rude question. That's right, Master Dumbledore suggested that I could settle down near the village of Ottery Hinkachpole. Shahji said happily. Where is that? Hermione asked suspiciously. You can ask Ron about this. As far as I know, the Weasley family lives near there. Shahji smiled. He really wanted to build a house for himself, and it wouldn't be a problem to live in the Broken Axe all the time. And living in a place where adult wizards gather can effectively shield Zonxi's shackles. Underage wizards cannot cast spells outside the school, unless there are adult wizards living nearby. So Shahji chose the vicinity of Ottery St. Catchpole village. And he felt that, in fact, in the backward wizarding world, it was quite boring, without even a phone call. And here, there are both wizards and muggles, which suits Shahji's wishes. At least when he wants to drink a Coke, he can have a place to buy it, isn't it? The little wizards got on the train one after another. Shahji knew that the luggage of the group of them had been put into the ring, and got on the train easily. Then they all gathered in one box, just like when Tathagata came. When Ron heard that Shahji was going to settle down near his house, he happily asked Shahji, where is your new home? I can visit you during the summer vacation, can't I? My new home hasn't been built yet, I have to go there first to find a good place. Shahji smiled. Oh, then you can ask my dad for help. In fact, there are many people in our family. If you need help moving, you can always come to us. Ron held his mouse scabbers in his hand, and his eyes sparkled. Shahji glanced at Ron's mouse, which was actually Peter Pettigrew. Pettigrew Peter was swept away by Shahji's gaze, and he shuddered all over, waking up from his dream. At the moment just now, he seemed to be stared at by a wild beast. After getting off the train, after bidding farewell to all her friends, Shahji chose not to go through the wall of King's Cross Station, but chose to apparate directly to the Leaky Cauldron. Oh, look who this is. Tom's familiar voice sounded. Shahji, long time no see. Oh, by the way, today is the day of summer vacation. How about this vacation? Will you also stay with me? Let's stay for a few days, and I'll move in after I settle into a new home. Shahji just threw out a few galleons. Give me a butterbeer. Underage wizards cannot drink alcohol. Come on, there's no alcohol at all this time. Shahji came to Ottery Street. Catchpole Village by night bus. This is indeed a place where muggles and wizards live together. He spent a whole day wandering around here before he really chose a place. This place is a bit similar to the scenery in his suitcase before. It is a hillside surrounded by a dense forest. The hillside is very gentle, but not low. There is even a flat lawn on the hillside. Shahji nodded in satisfaction. This place, I will return later. It is very simple for wizards to build houses. They only need to apply to the Ministry of Magic, and they can find a place to build a house. Shahji's formalities had been completed a long time ago, and with Dumbledore's help, the Ministry of Magic's work efficiency was unbelievably high. He took out his wand. This is where wizards live, and there is no problem using magic, as Dumbledore had told him. Even if there is a problem, it's not a problem. Shahji's background is hard. Shahji believed that if Fudge knew that he used a magic spell to build the house, not only would he not trouble him, but he would have to send someone to help him. Shahji didn't hesitate any longer, and began to cast a spell around this place. Stay safe. Shahji arranged protective magic nearby. Like the muggle repelling curse or something. Then I started working. He took out a pitch-black box from the ring, and released Nagini from the ring. Because no living things can be placed in the ring, Nagini can only temporarily hide in the gold plate on his ring. Now that I'm home, it's natural to let it out for some air. Hiss. I like it here, the sun is very good. Nagini is different from other snakes, she likes to bask in the sun. I don't know how Voldemort kept her in such a dark place. Hiss, hiss. As long as you like it, this will be our home from now on. Nagini crawled aside to bask in the sun. Shaji started to work. He put the black box on the ground, then raised his wand, said a spell, and a white light shot from the wand, hitting the black box. The black box trembled, and then the lid opened automatically. A lot of materials flew out of the black box. These materials start to self-assemble in the air. At the same time, many tools flew out of the black box and dug the foundation automatically. It is indeed a house that has been purchased for a large price. One-stop service. Shaji nodded in satisfaction. This is the finished house that Shaji found the corresponding house dealer through Tom and spent a lot of money to buy it. The selected house will be packed into this black box. You only need to unseal the seal at the designated place, and the materials in the black box will automatically fly out, and the house will be built automatically. The finished product is exactly the same as the picture that Shaji saw from the merchant. Shaji moved a chair next to Nagini and sat down, watching the house in front of her slowly take shape. Shaji only thought that this was so interesting that he could watch it all day long. However, the quality of the goods bought at a high price was still very high, and it didn't take long for the house to be built. The big house in front of me has complete facilities, exquisite and luxurious interior decoration, and a garden, almost like a villa. It is worth mentioning that this big house has many rooms. Shaji just went in and looked around, then nodded with satisfaction. It's perfect, and you can check in with your bags. The black box had finished its work and was still smoking white smoke. Shaji opened the black box, and then threw a bag of galleon inside, which was the final payment of the house. The black box closed the lid, then twisted and disappeared in place. Such a big house only cost 5,000 galleons, Shaji thought it was worth it. Even if he didn't have the Philosopher's Stone, he could afford it, and Nagini's venom cost hundreds of galleons an ounce. Shaji walked into the house, and the owl Shwecho was dumbfounded, because Shaji took out a lot of letters. Sorry, there are a lot of letters, but you can send them one by one. Next to the letter, Shaji prepared food for the owl. Little Snowball squinted at Shaji, with an expression of looking down on someone, then picked up all the letters and flew out of the window. I have to say that Little Snowball is a very strong owl. Shaji glanced at the house. The house was huge, but he was the only one. Thinking about it this way, he was still a bit lonely. And such a big house, even with magic, would be troublesome to clean. He suddenly remembered the house elf in the school. Just when Shaji was thinking about where to abduct a house elf, a paper airplane flew in from the window flickeringly. Mr. X with anonymity. Hello, I read your letter and to be honest, your idea has piqued my interest. I also just found out that the current Muggles have developed to this point. I remember when when I got into Muggles, they didn't have such powerful technology. I have thought about it for a long time, and you have a point of view that I agree with, that is, Muggles are developing rapidly, while the development of the wizarding world is almost stagnant. This is indeed a big problem. Muggle technology has developed so incredible that they may indeed find us someday in the future. If we were unprepared, then the wizards at that time would be like a group of mice whose nests were suddenly opened, exposed to the sun, frightened and fled in all directions. It has to be said that it is a kind of sadness. I am sure that the wizarding world also needs to develop, and that magic and technology can indeed be combined. The future you describe, where magic and technology intersect, fascinates me. I hope one day to be able to see it all with my own eyes. Here, I sincerely wish you success. Mr. G, whose name is not convenient to disclose. Quote. Shaji put down the letter paper, wishing me success. My idea, he must have misunderstood something. Shaji spread her hands. I don't have any ideas, I just said something casually. Do you really expect me to start a revolution in the wizarding world? Shaji sat at the desk, replied to Mr. G seriously, and then quietly watched the paper airplane fly out of the window. In fact, he had vaguely guessed the specific identity of Mr. G. It would be a troublesome thing if Dumbledore found out that he was a pen pal with him. Shaji scratched his head. Thinking of Dumbledore, he couldn't help thinking of Fawkes. Thinking of Fawkes, he suddenly remembered that he still had a phoenix that he didn't adopt. Haha, now is the time. Shaji suddenly remembered this, and quickly called the system. System, I want to claim my phoenix. Quote. Ding. Can the host call me at Yangjian time? What time is it? It's only 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, what's the problem? Don't you have to sleep with your system? Shaji only had a toothache. Ding. The host has successfully received the phoenix. Please move the host outside the house. The system said in a flattering tone, as if it wanted to dismiss Shaji quickly so that it could continue to rest. System, I found that your work attitude is a bit negative recently. You usually don't make much noise. What about your guiding tasks? What about your training plan? Ding. Hee, you are so competitive, do you still need my training? You are darker than anyone else now. Shaji was at a loss for words for a moment. Indeed, in just 1 year, he recognized a Dark Lord as his boss, and then became a pen pal with a Dark Lord. He even cheated the trust of the White Demon King. Hiss, am I already this dark? Shaji scratched her head, but I think I'm a good person. Suddenly, a pleasant phoenix cry came from outside the room. Shaji hurried out of the house. At this moment, in the distant sky, a group of fiery figures were approaching rapidly. Whoosh! It seemed far away, but the fiery red figure suddenly disappeared, and when it reappeared, it was already in front of Shaji. Shaji looked at the fiery red bird that was close at hand. Is this my phoenix? Shaji nodded with satisfaction. It is prettier than Fawkes. You have an aura that I like very much. Can I sign a contract with you? A crisp female voice sounded from Shaji's mind. Shaji smiled and nodded, but yes. Boom. Fierce flames erupted from Feng Wang's body, engulfing Shaji and Feng Wang in an instant. After a while, the flame disappeared, until he looked at the phoenix still standing beside him. He felt as if there was something extra in his blood. Ding. Congratulations to the host for signing the contract with Phoenix. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the talent, the power of the Phoenix. The force of the Phoenix. What does it do? The host can freely add the power of the Phoenix to the spells he casts to make the spells more powerful. Shaji suddenly remembered Dumbledore's fiery spell that had turned Quirrell into ashes. Shaji guessed that the spell that Dumbledore cast that day contained the power of the Phoenix. Because he obviously used the disarming spell, but the power was ridiculously large, and it looked extremely hot. Shaji said it was the first time he had seen the disarming spell that could turn people into ashes. If Harry's disarming spell has this power, wouldn't it be much cooler than Avatar? Shaji imitated Dumbledore's appearance and made a nest of Fawkes' style in a corner of the study. This phoenix is called Yasi Li. When it was perched in a certain valley, it suddenly felt inspired, and then found Shaji. After seeing him, it wanted to sign a contract with him very much. Shaji thought that the phoenix given to her by the system would appear out of thin air, but she didn't expect that it was also a phoenix that already existed in this world. It just gave the phoenix a kind of force majeure, so she couldn't help signing a contract with Shaji. Shaji just watched Yasi Li dozing off while standing on the shelf, which was good, so as not to make her explanation unclear. I don't know if this phoenix recognizes Fawkes. Early the next morning, when Xiao Shuecho returned to Shaji's house exhausted, he was startled by the phoenix standing on the shelf. Shaji brought it water and food, and it was exhausted. In one night, it not only ran all over Shaji's friends' homes to deliver letters, but also took back all their replies. I have to say, this strong little owl is so kind. Shaji showed a gratified smile like a capitalist. Shaji let Xiao Shuecho drink and eat, and then opened the letters from her friends. Knowing that Shaji has settled in a new home, they all expressed that they would come to play for Shaji's house for a few days, and celebrate for Shaji by the way. Hogwarts, headmaster's office. Dumbledore was sitting comfortably in his chair, frowning at his book. On the cover of this book is a handsome wizard with a bright smile. The Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher for the next school year has to recruit again. It's just rumors outside that the teachers of the Defense Against the Dark Arts class were all cursed by Voldemort. So despite the fact that job advertisements have been out for so long, almost no one has signed up except for this best-selling novelist named Gilderoy Lockhart. Right now Dumbledore was reading Lockhart's book. I have to say that his ability to tell stories is still very strong. If his ability is really as strong as it is written in his book, then the Professorship of Defense Against the Dark Arts is indeed very suitable for him. It's just that the words in his book are still a bit exaggerated, which makes Dumbledore a little suspicious whether Lockhart is exaggerating. How about letting him try? Dumbledore seemed to have made up his mind. CFEJ. Suddenly, the flames flickered in the office. Dumbledore looked at the firelight in surprise. He was so familiar with this firelight, it was the flame produced by the Phoenix's operation. But Fawkes is right next to him, and it definitely wasn't made by Fawkes. The flames disappeared, and a phoenix appeared in Dumbledore's office. Dumbledore had never seen this phoenix, but he noticed that there was a letter in the phoenix's mouth. The phoenix flew up to Dumbledore's desk, handed the letter to Dumbledore, and then looked curiously at Fawkes not far away. Fawkes also flew over, looked at the same kind curiously, and tweeted hello. Dumbledore took the letter and opened it curiously. He also wanted to know who this person who signed a contract with Phoenix was like him. But when he opened the letter, what caught his eyes was the familiar font. Dear Professor Dumbledore, hello, my new house has been completed. It would be a great honor for you to come to visit me tomorrow. The address is attached. By the way, when I was looking for a place to settle here, I found this phoenix by accident. Her name is Yasi Lee. When we first met, we had a good talk and signed a contract together. I don't know if she and Fawkes recognize each other. Hope she and Fawkes get along well. Also, please excuse my presumptuousness, I gave Yasi Lee the coordinates of your office. Your student Shaw G. Quote, Dumbledore let go of his heart, and then looked at Asili carefully. Only those who are upright and brave enough can be favored by the Phoenix. Dumbledore was very relieved that Yasi Lee would favor Shaw G. Shaw G's character really suits the Phoenix family's appetite. Dumbledore happily wrote a reply letter, readily agreed to Shaw G's invitation, and then handed the letter to Yasi Lee. Yasi Lee yelled at Fawkes, as if to say hello, and then disappeared in the same place with a flash of fire. Dumbledore touched a ring in his hand. Shaw G could actually use the ring to send a message to himself. But he still sent Phoenix Yasi Lee to identify the door, and showed off by the way. Dumbledore put down Lockhart's book with a smile, and took out a box of roach piles in a drawer. When he is happy, he always likes to eat some candy, which can make his good mood last longer. To Shaw G's surprise, it was not the family who came to visit first. It's the Grangers. After receiving Shaw G's letter, the Grangers drove overnight with Hermione. Then according to Hermione's guidance, the Granger family passed through Shaw G's muggle-repelling spell. Came to Shaw G's big house. The Grangers were almost fainted by Nagini, who was lying in front of Shaw G's house basking in the sun. They had never seen such a huge snake. Fortunately, Hermione saw Nagini once in Shaw G's suitcase, and knew that she was Shaw G's pet, so she quickly comforted her parents. After learning that this is Shaw G's pet, and seeing that Nagini didn't pounce on it, the Grangers felt relieved. At this time, Shaw G also knew that the Grangers had arrived, so she hurried downstairs and let the Grangers in. As soon as they met, Mr. Granger hugged Shaw G excitedly. Thank you so much, Shaw G. We only have one daughter, if you hadn't saved her. The Grangers couldn't be more grateful to Shaw G, especially after they knew that Shaw G had fended off a lethal attack for their daughter. They couldn't imagine what would happen to them without Hermione. This is a pain they simply cannot accept. There are many rooms in this big house, so Shaw G can settle their family easily. Shaw G showed Hermione around her house. Hermione, I recently made a new friend. That's great, can you introduce me? Of course, she will be very happy to know you. Hermione looked at Shaw G warily. What's her name? When did you meet her? Shaw G didn't notice the difference, and continued to say enthusiastically, her name is Yasi Lee. I knew her the day I moved here. She lives in your house. Of course, she's been living with me ever since. Hermione looked at Shaw G in disbelief. Her heart sounded like a sunny day. ... She always thought that her enemy would be Cassandela. Unexpectedly, how long has he and Cassandela been separated from him? So soon he made a girlfriend, and lived together as soon as he met. Oh, looks like I came at a bad time, Hermione said dejectedly. How come? You came just in time, Shaji said cheerfully. Let me introduce you. Shaji pushed open the door of her own study. Hermione had to force a smile and followed Shaji into the study. Hermione, this is Yasi Lee. Yasi Lee, this is my good friend Hermione Granger. Shaji was introducing Hermione and Yasi Lee. This is your girlfriend. Hermione couldn't help exclaiming after seeing Yasi Lee. She regretted it after she finished speaking, and quickly covered her mouth. Ah, everyone in Shaji was dumbfounded, who said Yasi Lee belonged to his girlfriend. Although Yasi Lee is a phoenix, she is also a bird. People can't. At least they shouldn't. Who told you that Yasi Lee is my girlfriend? Shaji put her hand on her forehead. I'm sorry, I misunderstood, because you just said, her, and then you said that you will live together in the future. Hermione's voice became quieter as she spoke, and now she wanted to dig a hole to bury yourself in, so embarrassing. Ah, well, it's my fault, I didn't make it clear. Shaji scratched his head, and he found that what he just said was indeed a little ambiguous. Yasi Lee looked at Shaji and Hermione curiously, and tweeted softly. Is she a phoenix? Hermione looked at the phoenix in amazement, the first time she had seen a phoenix. She hadn't been to the principal's office, and she hadn't seen Fox. Yes, I happened to meet her when I came here to settle down. Shaji touched Yasi Lee's warm feathers, then we signed the contract. Hermione swallowed hard. You mean, she signed a contract with you? As far as I know, the only wizard known to have a relationship with the Phoenix is Professor Dumbledore. According to the book, he owns the only Phoenix. Yes, you were right, Professor Dumbledore does have a Phoenix, his name is Fox, and I have seen him before. Shaji said happily, I just asked Yasi Lee to send a letter to Dumbledore, I invite him to my new home. Yasi Lee and Fox are friends now. Hermione said to Shaji hesitantly, may I touch her? Yasi Lee seemed to understand what she said, and nodded. Hermione's trembling little hands gently placed on Yasi Lee's body, her feathers were warm and soft. Hermione was very excited, this was the first time she saw this legendary magical animal recorded in the book. With the addition of the Granger family at home, Shaji suddenly felt that the empty home had a bit of popularity. He happily took Hermione to a Muggle town to do some shopping. Wizards' entertainment is really scarce. I think I can buy some Muggle electrical appliances. Shaji walked into a home appliance store excitedly. Hermione followed and whispered. But, in places with magic, it seems that electrical appliances don't work. For example, in Hogwarts. Of course, I can modify it myself. You have to trust my alchemy skills. Shaji picked out the TV with great interest. The combination of magic and technology is not just talk. Shaji only thinks that it is good to do some interesting experiments. He has always admired the flying car that Mr. Weasley transformed for himself. And of course, there's Sirius' super cool flying motorcycle. But relatively speaking, Shaji still likes Mr. Weasley's car, because the flying motorcycle is open air and not very comfortable. Now Shaji is very rich. He had already disguised his identity, and then used gold to exchange enough Muggle currency in the bank. He bought a lot of electrical appliances at once, including TVs, game consoles, computers, and so on. He even bought a VCR. Of course, electrical appliances in this era are still very backward, such as that bulky computer. Shaji just looks at it and feels ancient. These are very advanced in this era, but very backward in Shaji's eyes. Shaji only has the confidence to make them very interesting. When Shaji left the home appliance store, the store manager respectfully sent them out, and today their sales exceeded the sales in the past 3 months. Because it was inconvenient to use magic in front of Muggles, Shaji left them an address. After the clerk delivered the goods to the location, let them throw them back. Seeing those Muggle clerks driving away, Shaji just used the ring to put all these things away. In the following time, Shaji and Hermione walked around the street all morning, buying a lot of clothes and snacks. It can only be said that shopping is indeed the happiest thing for human beings, especially when the money is not bad. So when they got home, they still had more to say. Hermione was so happy that she blushed, she was very cute. Shaji just turned his face away, he felt that he was really not a lolicon. In the afternoon, when Mr. Granger and Shahji said that there was no electricity and the TV could not be turned on. Here comes the Weasleys. They actually lived nearby. When the kind Mrs. Weasley found out that Shahji was only living alone, she immediately brought a whole family over to visit her. I wanted to make Shahji's house more lively, so that the poor child would not feel so lonely. She also brought a lot of food that she made with her own hands. It has to be said that Mrs. Weasley's craftsmanship is still good. The reason Ron didn't like to eat her mother's food was simply because he was tired of eating it. When Mr. Weasley saw Shahji studying the TV, he was so excited that he immediately joined the discussion. When Mr. Weasley suggested that maybe with a little magic trick the TV could be turned on and received a signal, Mrs. Weasley coughed loudly aside. Mr. Weasley loves Muggle products so much that he often forgets his duties. So he will deliberately leave some loopholes in the Muggle Protection Act he formulated, so that some of his own small interests do not constitute illegal acts. Hermione had cooked dinner with her mother, Mrs. Granger and Mrs. Weasley, and they were having a party tonight. Ron and their big brothers visited Shahji's house together. Finally, they played Quidditch in front of Shahji's house, and their youngest sister, Ginny, watched enviously on the ground. Her big brothers won't let her play on the broom now, saying she's too young. And Shahji didn't participate in these, because he has more interesting things to do now. Shahji liked Mr. Weasley very much. He quietly pulled Mr. Weasley and then studied those electrical appliances with Mr. Granger. Although Mr. Weasley lacks basic knowledge of many Muggle products, he has very rich experience in magical transformation. After they had been tinkering for 2 hours, the TV turned on smoothly without any electricity or antenna, and even received the TV program smoothly. Mr. Granger stared dumbfounded at the dead TV, which was still on, completely confused about what was going on. Yeah, Shahji clapped hands with Mr. Weasley, and then excitedly looked at the normal working TV in front of them. Magic can interfere with electrical circuits and TV signals, and Shahji and Mr. Weasley struggled for a long time before finding a solution. Shahji originally planned to use the weather spell to convert magic power into electricity, and use magic power to ensure that the electricity can run. But in the end, the TV almost burned out. Fortunately, Shahji foresaw it early and revoked the weather spell in time. In the end, under Mr. Weasley's suggestion, Shahji magically transformed the TV into a state where it could run with magic power. Because crystals can store magic power, Shahji took out a large piece of crystal for this purpose, and then filled the crystal with magic power 3 times and 5 times to act as a storage battery. Shahji has a lot of magic power, and this little magic power is like a drop in the bucket, it's nothing. In this way, Shahji and Mr. Weasley created the first television in history that could only be operated by magic power. This TV does not need electricity to drive, but also magically can receive the signal of the TV station. Shahji nodded in satisfaction. It turns out that technology and magic can be combined. Shahji's first preliminary experiment declared a success 0. After such exchanges, the relationship between Mr. Weasley and Shahji became closer, even though they had only known each other for a few hours. If it wasn't for the relationship with Ron, Shahji would almost have pulled Mr. Weasley into a trick. Shahji found that with the help of Mr. Weasley, it would be much easier to modify Muggle electrical appliances by himself. Mr. Weasley's many whimsical ideas were very helpful to his subsequent magic and scientific experiments. Because of the successful case of TV, the next game consoles, video recorders, computers and so on were also transformed. Then the Weasley children were fascinated by Shahji's game console. The entertainment life of wizards is too boring. For them, things like game consoles are simply a blow to dimensionality reduction. Transformation of this electrical appliance is only a preliminary experiment, and there is still a long way to go. Shahji quietly watched George and Fred yelling and playing Mario, but her thoughts drifted far away. In the evening, the Weasley family bid farewell to Shahji. They lived nearby. Mr. Weasley and Shahji agreed that they would definitely come to visit Shahji in their spare time until they had more exchanges. It had been a long time since he had met a little wizard who had such similar interests as him. 093. After Hermione and the Granger couple went to rest, Shahji sat at her desk and skillfully opened her system panel. Talents. obscure, Parseltongue the highest level, crisis alertness, combined magic talent, unicorn shadow, druid, friendship paper plane, phoenix power. Black magic mastery, 10. Transfiguration mastery, 10. Prophecy proficiency, 3. Potion mastery, 6. Alchemy mastery, 8. Expand. After Sha Ji studied for more than a year, especially after communicating with Dumbledore, Mr. G and Voldemort, his panel has changed a lot. Except for the lack of progress in divination mastery, other items have made great progress. Especially in alchemy, Dumbledore is actually an excellent master alchemist. He is good friends with the legendary master alchemist Nicole Flamel. So Sha Ji learned a lot from him, and directly pushed the alchemy mastery to 8 points. It is also because of this that he can transform those electrical appliances so handily. Mr. Weasley's whimsy and whimsy alone, without the corresponding technology, cannot be successfully transformed. Sha Ji closed the system panel and temporarily put aside the alchemy matter. He opened the soul magic notebook he was studying. He has been researching the power of the soul, because he has long noticed that most of the wizard's power comes from the wizard's soul. Sha Ji didn't find any physical difference between wizards and ordinary muggles, so the difference can only come from the soul. A wizard's soul power is not the same as a muggle's soul power. Sha Ji speculates that the source of wizards' magic power also comes from the unique soul power of wizards. Whether it is the unforgivable curse or the Patronus charm, you need to have strong emotions to use it successfully. It has to be said that this is really idealistic, and this kind of idealistic power has to make Sha Ji think of the human soul. Because the soul magic he is good at is also like this, the more intense the emotion, the stronger the will, the greater the power of the soul magic. Sha Ji sat on his chair, his whole body relaxed, all his consciousness was focused on his brain. He has always guessed that the soul is hidden in a certain corner deep in the brain. The original magic notebook did not give Sha Ji a clear answer. Now he wants to find out the answer by himself. He wants to find out his own soul in his own body. He's been doing it for a long time. But for a long time, the brain is still the brain, without seeing any clues about the soul. Just when Sha Ji was in a daze and was about to fall asleep, suddenly, a white shadow flashed across his mind. Sha Ji's consciousness quickly followed the white shadow and rushed over. It took him a lot of effort to finally catch up to the white shadow. He originally thought that the white shadow was his own soul, but when he really caught up, he realized that the white shadow was the phantom of a unicorn. The phantom of the unicorn hissed silently towards him, and then rushed into a white mist. Sha Ji had a hunch that there seemed to be something very important to him hidden behind the white mist, and he had a hunch that there was no danger in following the unicorn into the white mist. So Sha Ji's consciousness followed the phantom of the unicorn into the white mist. In the white mist, there is a vast expanse of whiteness, the white sky, the white ground, and the ground extends in all directions, extending to the end that he can't see. In such an empty place where there seemed to be nothing, only the unicorn was neighing at him, but this time, he heard the sound. What kind of place is this? Why is there nothing? I was at my house just now. Sha Ji thought to himself. As soon as his thought flashed, the white world in front of him immediately changed into his home. Sha Ji was stunned. In this world, his consciousness can dominate everything. Sha Ji saw that the unicorn was still neighing at him, as if signaling him to follow it. Therefore, Sha Ji only planned to walk towards it, and at this moment, he discovered that he suddenly had a body. He was still a consciousness just now. Sensing that there was no danger, Sha Ji followed up decisively. At this time, this white world has already turned into his home. Therefore, Sha Ji followed the unicorn out of the study, through the long corridor, and into the living room. Here, he actually saw a person. This man was not naked, but his face was stern. He raised his head, stared fiercely at the ceiling with a pair of fierce eyes. As soon as Sha Ji saw this person, she felt a chill. Because this person's face is exactly the same as his. Is this ferocious-looking person his own soul? Sha Ji looked at the fierce self in doubt. Am I such a fierce person? Sha Ji began to doubt her own personality. The fierce-looking Sha Ji immediately turned into a cloud of mist and disappeared in place after looking up at Sha Ji. The cloud of fog suddenly hit Sha Ji. Sha Ji just wanted to dodge, but he suddenly found that he could not move. The mist blended smoothly into his body. Boom! Countless memory fragments reorganized in his mind, and then dissipated again. It took a long time until he came back to his senses. He stared heavily at the phantom of the unicorn that brought him here. Why did you bring me here? I really don't want to remember such a memory. Only now did Shaji realize that his life had been deleted. His name is Shaji, and the original owner is also Shaji, which is no coincidence. Shaji is Shaji, always just one person. There is no original owner at all. In other words, the original owner is also himself. When he was tortured by the werewolf wizard with the Cruciatus curse, it was not when he had just traveled here. He actually came to this world 11 years ago. At that time, he transmigrated into a little baby, and when he opened his eyes, he was already in an orphanage. At the same time, he also awakened a system, which is called the strongest white wizard training system. This system is actually not very powerful, which makes Shaji's strength grow very slowly. Just when he was almost 11 years old and knew what the world was like, he began to wait for the Hogwarts owl with great anticipation. At this time, he was captured by the werewolf wizard. Because his system was not very powerful, he simply didn't have enough ability to escape. Unable to escape, Shaji could only endure the inhuman torture that followed for half a year. No one can maintain the original state of mind under such a long torture. Yes, Shaji has turned black at this time. A system is a system after all, although the improvement of strength is very slow, but Shaji still slowly accumulates enough power to escape. Why am I suffering so much? I want to make the world feel the same pain as me. I want to destroy this sad world. At this time, Shaji's heart was full of violence. He swore that when he escaped successfully, he would ravage the world crazily. At this time, the strongest white wizard training system suddenly started the restart process. It is a training system for white wizards, but Shaji at that time was already a full-fledged Dark Lord. The system restarted successfully, and at that moment, Sha lost all the memories of this world from that day onwards. It seems that part of his life has been deleted, and his whole being has been reset. When he regained consciousness, he mistakenly thought that he had just crossed over, and just after crossing over, he suffered a Cruciatus curse. Because of the loss of those extremely painful memories, he lost all his previous violent thoughts, and he regained his original intention when he just traveled back then. Although he recovered some previous memory fragments later, he also thought that they were the memories left by the original owner, so he didn't pay much attention to them. The system has also been restarted, but after the restart, although the name of the system is still called the strongest white wizard training system, some strange changes have taken place. It seems that it has also been blackened with Shaji. Shaji quietly recalled the painful memories he had forgotten before, as well as the despair and violent feelings in his heart at that time. It's like watching another person's experience. Although this emotion was strong enough, it could no longer have any influence on Shaji. Because now Shaji is no longer desperate, he is full of hope, full of confidence, and full of love for the future. Shaji turned around, as if saying goodbye to her unfortunate self. Then he followed the phantom of the unicorn without hesitation and returned to reality. Shaji opened his eyes, and he suddenly found that his soul had solidified a lot. He understood that from this moment on, his soul was truly complete. He glanced at the wall clock on the wall and found that only a short minute had passed. He sighed, though this time he still hadn't found his soul. However, this journey to the misty illusion still benefited him a lot. Misty illusion is a state between life and death. It appears in people's mind, which is both reality and illusion. What it looks like depends on the person who enters there, and some trance experiences involve relatives or other acquaintances of the person. For example, the scene where Harry and Dumbledore bid farewell at King's Cross Station in a vast expanse of whiteness at the end is a blurred illusion. Shaji could only go in once under the leadership of the unicorn phantom that was already in the soul state. The next day, Shaji woke up early, because there will be many guests today. He has to be ready. Mrs. Granger and Hermione were going to help, but Shaji politely refused. Perhaps it was because he recovered part of his lost memories last night, and now he really wants to cook Chinese food. He wants to cook all the dishes he would have cooked in his previous life today. Anyway, there are a lot of people, and they can finish eating. And, with the help of magic, Shaji alone is worth 10 chefs. Hermione moved a chair and silently watched Shaji cooking. Not long after, the Whirlies and Cassandela also came, so, in the kitchen, there was another beauty sitting and watching the real cooking. The Whirlies and the Grangers were talking together, and the house elf Caffey was sent by Mrs. Whirley to the door to help Shaji receive guests. Next, the Weasley family also came. Mrs. Weasley was very surprised to see Shaji cooking neatly. So, she immediately pulled her children and made a lot of remarks about how good other people's children are, how you are not up to date, and so on. This made Ron and his big brothers sigh helplessly. After finally waiting for their mother to finish the long speech, they couldn't wait to run to turn on Shaji's game console. Mr. Weasley also watched Shaji's work with great interest, because Shaji's kitchen has many kitchen utensils that he has never seen before. Although he couldn't help but want to ask about the purpose many times, but seeing Shaji who was serious, he didn't bother him in the end. Not long after, the flames flickered, and Professor Dumbledore and McGonagall came hand in hand. After they visited Shaji's house together, they chatted with the Whirlies. Fox, who brought them over, immediately slipped into Shaji's study and went to chat with Yasi Lee. He hadn't seen Tongzu for a long time, so he couldn't wait to talk to Yasiu. By noon, a large table in the garden was already filled with all kinds of delicacies. The house elf, Caffey, has helped with the magic, so the dishes are still steaming hot, even though they've been out for a while. The house elf, Caffey, was busy helping out, setting the tableware, moving the chairs, and was extremely busy. Hermione wanted to help but couldn't intervene at all. Every time she tried to help, she would be watched by Caffey with horrified eyes. Seems terrified that Hermione will take her job. In desperation, Hermione had no choice but to give up helping, but it also gave her early attention to creatures like house elves. After Shaji finally finished her work, she invited everyone to have dinner together. He glanced around, and suddenly realized that Harry was not in sight. Shaji frowned. The Dursleys probably wouldn't lock Harry up anymore. Shaji remembered that she hadn't received a reply from Harry. Oh, yes, Dobby. Dobby the house elf must have intercepted all letters addressed to Harry. Shaji couldn't pick Harry up now. He was in a wizarding settlement, so it didn't matter if he used magic occasionally, but the Dursleys were in the Muggle community. He couldn't apparate there. This Trace is really troublesome, but Shaji just wants to block Trace. It is not difficult. Shaji just wiped her hands. It seemed that she had to wait to find Harry later. The dishes on the table are very rich. What Longjing shrimp, Peking duck, Yangzhou lion head, squirrel mandarin fish, roast suckling pig. All kinds of delicacies amazed these British wizards who had been living in the gourmet desert. Mrs. Weasley also asked Shaji for a recipe. Dumbledore said with a smile, let the house elves of Hogwarts also learn bachelor's degree. He fell in love with one of the sweet and sour carp and sweet and sour pork. This sweet and sour taste made him very intoxicated. After dinner, Shaji invited Dumbledore to his study. Professor Dumbledore, I recently modified a Muggle item that I thought would be useful for the school library. Dumbledore smiled. What item? He didn't say that it was illegal for Shaji to modify Muggle artifacts. I must have known about the intersection of Mr. Weasley and Shaji. This is it. Shaji turned on the modified computer. Dumbledore leaned closer to the computer curiously. Shaji brought up a search bar, then entered Nicole Flamel's name on it, and clicked search. Immediately, many pages of information about Nicholas appeared on the screen. Shaji just clicked on one of the messages with the mouse. Then a book on Shaji's bookshelf automatically flew over, and automatically turned to the page where the message was recorded. Dumbledore saw it right away. Shaji knew, this computer has been modified by me. I have strengthened its built-in search function, so that it can remember all the books in my study. As long as you enter the information you want to know, you can immediately see the related information, all books with this information, and find them automatically. It's not that Shaji never thought that she could directly look up relevant information on the computer without having to turn the pages of books. But there is only one computer, and there can only be one such computer in the same area. Otherwise, the two computers will interfere with each other. If there is only one computer, it can be controlled by Mrs. Pants, the administrator of the library. Dumbledore looked at the computer on Shaji's desk in admiration. I think Mrs. Pants will like this. I have to say that the wisdom of Muggles cannot be underestimated. This computer is actually not very useful in my study, because I have very few books here, and like the Hogwarts library, which is as vast as a sea of books, it is difficult to find books. Easy. Shaji paused, and continued, of course, if you ask Mrs. Pants, I believe you can get useful suggestions, but Mrs. Pants's suggestion is only a range. Sometimes it is difficult to be precise. A book. This is different, it can easily find the book you want to find, and even help you turn to the specific page. Shaji calmly introduced his modified computer to Dumbledore. He felt that this computer was really useful for the Hogwarts library, at least if there was this computer in the first grade. Harry and the others didn't need to look for Nicole Flamel for so long. Of course, we cannot include the books in the restricted section, Shaji said, or add a permission so that only professors can retrieve the contents of the restricted section. Shaji recommended this computer to Dumbledore, which was actually a kind of promotion. When little wizards go to the library to try this computer, they will be surprised to find that when technology and magic are combined, it can be so convenient. This kind of combination is two different things from the Hogwarts Express that was crudely transformed. Finally, Dumbledore agreed to take the computer home and try it out. This computer has been modified by Shaji, and it is already considered an alchemy product. The reason why Shaji did this was to promote the development of the wizarding world. Now Shaji is also a wizard, so he hopes that the wizarding world will always make progress, at least not so ignorant. He doesn't want to see that one day in the future, when the smartphone is invented, Muggles will have the freedom to communicate at any time. And wizards also need to use owls to communicate. This is also Shaji's first effort. He decided to start by influencing the little wizards. It was the same as Voldemort's original intention when he wanted to apply for the defense against the dark arts professor. As night fell, everyone gradually began to say goodbye and leave. Before leaving, Professor McGonagall was very pleased that Shaji could find a place to stay. She hoped that the Weasley family would take care of Shaji, who lived alone, in the days to come. Kashan Della intends to stay for a few days before going back, but Mr. Tionley thinks this, a few days, may be equivalent to a summer vacation. The reluctant Mr. Wally was finally taken away by Mrs. Wally, and he also wanted to stay and play for a few more days. The Grangers planned to drive back the next day, but unlike Mr. Worley, they were quite relieved that Hermione was here to play for a few days. Originally, Ron also wanted to stay with an excuse, and then play the game console, but was pulled away by Fred and George. You don't want to stay here, do you? Little Ronnie. I think we should teach him some new knowledge as soon as possible, in case he always makes some untimely decisions in the future. When Ron was pulled away, his face was full of confusion, not knowing what happened. After seeing off all the guests, Shaji turned back to the house, where Hermione and Kashan Della were in the living room. Kashan Della was watching the TV program in front of her curiously. She had never watched TV before, but she still thought the Muggles on TV were stupid. Hermione explained to her on the sidelines that this was just a comedy, and the Muggles in it were deliberately pretending to be stupid to amuse the audience. But Kashan Della still can't understand. Shaji sat on the sofa beside him without making a sound, when suddenly he took out his wand and stirred the air randomly. Cass, Della and Hermione heard a crisp tearing sound. Then they were surprised to see that Shaji untied a silk thread emitting faint blue light from her body. He wrapped the silk thread around the arm of the sofa, and the thread disappeared without a trace. Shaji, what is this? Hermione asked curiously. Oh, I just found a way to untie my thread and tie it to the sofa. In this way, the Ministry of Magic will always think that I am in this living room, and I can cast spells freely outside. Shaji, he said happily, just as he thought, things like Zongxi really couldn't stop him. Voldemort solved this problem very easily at the beginning. He even went to kill his father and his family during the vacation, and then blamed his uncle, and cast the Imperious Curse on his uncle, making him plead guilty. The people from the Ministry of Magic didn't even find out the root hair, and directly locked his uncle into Azkaban. Kassan Della frowned. So what are you going out to do again? She really knew Shaji very well. Shaji would have no problem casting spells here, but now he has removed Zongxi. Doesn't this prove that he is going out? Oh, yes, I'm planning to go out now. Shaji said with a smile. Harry hasn't replied to me for a long time, and I'm a little worried. So I want to check now. Yeah, Harry didn't write me back either. Hermione also frowned and said, maybe we should tell Professor Dumbledore today. Professor Dumbledore is very busy, Hermione, he can't pay attention to every student. Shaji said casually, he just wanted to see Dobby. Shaji has been greedy for house elves for a long time, and it is still a bit difficult to get a house elf to be a housekeeper. And Dobby's final death has always made Shaji feel uneasy. Of course, he didn't mind paying Dobby, a free elf, a salary. And, as long as he was paid, Hermione wouldn't resent him using house elves in the future. Shaji is not short of money now. Don't worry, I'm just going to have a look and I'll be back soon. Shaji handed a letter to Herald Snowball, who disappeared into the night sky with the envelope in her mouth. Cassandela sighed, and muttered, every time you say to reassure others. Shaji didn't hear Cassandela's words, he walked out the door, then cast the flying spell, and followed the little snowball far away. Dobby wanted to intercept all letters addressed to Harry, and that was bound to happen. The little snowball flew very fast, and it didn't take long before it arrived at Privet Drive. Suddenly, the little snowball seemed to lose its direction in midair, and flew up and down for a while, and in the blink of an eye, the letter on its mouth fell off. Then the little snowball started to fly back. Shaji saw the small figure on the ground with a single glance. Dobby crouched behind a low fence at an alley, snapping his fingers with his right hand. He cast a spell similar to the confusion curse on Little Snowball, making it mistakenly think that he had delivered the letter, and then Little Snowball dropped the envelope in midair and started to return home. Dobby snapped his fingers again, and the envelope that fell from the sky suddenly appeared in his hand. Dobby looked at the envelope in his hand and muttered to himself, as long as the great Harry Potter feels isolated by his friends, he definitely doesn't want to go back to Hogwarts. So it was you who intercepted the letter we sent to Harry. Shaji's voice came slowly. Dobby was taken aback, and when he turned his head to see Shaji, he raised his right hand and wanted to snap his fingers. He wanted to apparate and get out of here right away. The wizard's anti-apparition spells had no effect on a house elf like him. It's just that when he just raised his hand, he was shocked to find that he couldn't move himself. Dobby looked at Shaji in horror, he had no idea when he was under the spell. Tell me, which wizard's house elf are you? Dobby suddenly found that he seemed to be able to speak again, but his body was still unable to move. Dobby can't tell. Dobby is a bad elf. Don't implicate your master. Although Dobby was terrified, he still refused to say who his master was. It's a pity that Shaji already knew about Dobby's background. So Dobby's tight lip was useless. Oh, so it's the house elf of Lucius Malfoy's family, Shaji said in feigned surprise. Dobby was stunned. How did this little wizard know that he was a house elf of the Malfoy family? A house elf of a pure-blood family intercepted Harry Potter's letter without authorization. Did he follow your master's order, and wanted to plot something wrong? Shaji's tone was very hostile. Oh, no, Dobby never intended to kill the great Mr. Harry Potter, Dobby shrieked. But Harry Potter is going to be in danger. Something terrible is going to happen at Hogwarts. So you're going to make Harry Potter think he's isolated by his friends and give up the idea of going to school. Oh, Dobby is a bad elf. Dobby obviously can't say that. If Dobby could move now, he would definitely grab the brick next to him and knock his head madly. Whether you tell me or not, I can see what you're thinking, Dobby. Shaji casually undid the petrification spell on Dobby. You go. I am Harry Potter's best friend. With me here, he will be safe. You probably know my strength. But, Harry Potter will be in danger if he insists on going to Hogwarts, and Dobby wants to protect him. Dobby looked at Shaji in horror, but still say it bravely. If you do this, it will only be counterproductive, and it will not be able to protect Harry Potter at all. And, Dobby, you have no idea what Hogwarts means to Harry. Shaji suddenly lowered his voice. He longed for that place, just as you long for freedom. Slightly. Dobby was so frightened that his throat seemed to be blocked by something. Oh, bad Dobby. Bad Dobby. Dobby banged his head against the wall next to him. Okay, as I said, I will guarantee Harry's safety. So, now you can hand over the intercepted letter to me. Aggrieved, Dobby took out a stack of letters from behind and handed them to Shaji. Shaji took the envelope, and his hand touched Dobby's mouth. Shaji said suddenly, Dobby, if you want to be free, then at 9 o'clock tomorrow night, wait at the gate of Malfoy Manor. Dobby's ears couldn't help moving, then drooped again. ... Woo. Dobby is a house elf. Dobby can't aspire to be free. Dobby. Bad Dobby. With a mournful face, Dobby used the dirty pillowcase on his body to sip his nose, and then, the small figure gradually disappeared into the shadow of the corner. Shaji stood at the door of the Dursleys' house, not intending to go in. He took out his wand and waved it casually. A transparent cover suddenly appeared and covered the Dursleys' house. This cover can shield Zongxi from investigation. He plucked a leaf from the flower bed beside him. The leaf suddenly turned into 1,000 paper cranes in his hands. The 1,000 paper cranes fluttered their wings, flew up, drew a perfect arc, and flew into Harry's bedroom window. After a while, the door of the Dursleys' house was opened. Harry walked out, and saw Shaji standing on the curb. Oh, Shaji, I finally saw you. These days, I haven't even received a letter from you. Harry began to complain. He thought he was forgotten by these friends up. Harry, your letters were intercepted by a house elf, but it's all sorted out now. The stack of 10 great mails on the handle of the heavy cart was handed to Harry. Then he explained why Dobby had intercepted his letters. Oh, I said, why does he protect me like this? That little elf called Dobby. Harry, you don't know what the existence of Voldemort means to these house elves. So when Voldemort disappears because of you, they will be so grateful to you. This feeling is even stronger than that of wizards. Holding the letter in his hand, Harry didn't know what to say for a while. Well, there is also a letter I sent you here. My new home has been completed, and the address is written in the letter. Welcome to my house as a guest. By the way, I suggest that you should stay at your aunt's house for to come back next week. You know, I've always been very accurate in what I say. Shaji's dark pupils seemed to be able to see through Harry's heart. Harry couldn't help but nodded. He knew that Shaji could only occasionally see a part of the future. If he hadn't given him devil training in advance, he would have died a long time ago, so he had better believe what he said. Just as Shaji was about to leave, she suddenly turned around and said, That's right, CFEC, I just used a magic at the Dursleys' house to block traces for you, so you can use magic at home now. Harry's eyes lit up suddenly. He couldn't use magic at home, which bored him to death, and now he could finally use magic at will, so he was naturally happy. I'm leaving, goodbye. If there's anything you need, ask Hedwig to send me a letter. Shaji waved his hand, turned his body slightly, and then his figure suddenly disappeared in place. Cool, Harry couldn't help admiring, although he really wanted to learn this magic from Shaji, but he was very afraid that Shaji would take out his big jeep again. When Shaji returned home, Hermione and Cassandra hadn't gone to bed yet, but sat in the living room and waited for him. It's late, you should go to bed early instead of waiting for me here. Shaji said helplessly. Who is waiting for you? I just didn't want to go to bed so early. Cassandra rolled her eyes, but she was quietly relieved. She was really worried that Shaji would go all out with some dark wizard again. This guy has a lot of criminal records. He might go out and bring back a Granger. Cassandra stood up and glared at Shaji, then went back to rest. As soon as she breathed a sigh of relief, she felt drowsy immediately. Is Harry okay? Hermione is also very sleepy now, just trying to hold on. Like Cassandra, she is also worried about who Shaji will go to fight with. It's nothing, an elf intercepted all his letters to protect Harry, and I have persuaded him to go back. Shaji then told Hermione lightly about Dobby. Hermione frowned cutely, and secretly planned to look for some information about house elves tomorrow, and then went back to rest. The next day, Shaji stood on the lawn in front of his house, with several targets planted not far in front of him. He suddenly raised the wand in his hand, and a lifelike unicorn rushed out of his wand, turning into a white shadow and rushing towards the target. The speed is too fast to see clearly. The unicorn's horn still has a fiery red light. Boom! The unicorn's horn hit the target, and the target exploded with a bang. This is Shaji's combination magic. Unicorn Shadow plus Disarming Charm infused with Phoenix Force. Shaji scratched his head. No wonder Dumbledore's disarming curse is so fierce. This Phoenix Force seems very gentle, but if it is infused a lot, the disarming curse can also deal fatal damage. It can also be inferred that when Dumbledore saw Shaji hit the killing curse, he was so angry that he poured too much Phoenix Force and knocked Quirrell away with a disarming curse. At the same time, Shaji is very satisfied with the shadow of the unicorn. As long as any spell is combined with it, it will become an automatic tracking spell. After the Snow White Unicorn Phantom smashed the target, it returned to Shaji's side with cheerful steps. As long as Shaji's magic power is not broken, the phantom of this unicorn will always exist. And now it seems that it has self-awareness. Shaji stroked the unicorn, but it passed through, and the tentacles were cold. This is about the same as those ghosts in Hogwarts. My name is Sophia. A sense of consciousness came from the phantom of the unicorn. Hi, Sophia, my name is Shaji. Shaji showed a gentle smile. Sophia took him to find his missing memory, although he didn't want to recall that memory. But it restored his soul whole. As a result, he became more adept at using his magical powers. So Shaji is still very grateful to Sophia. Shaji shook her hand. Sophia jumped out again, like a phantom, passed through the target in front, and then slammed into the target behind. Shaji let it come back, and then gently stroked its horn with her hand. He understood that the unicorn phantom traces Fia's horn, which can be transformed into phantom or real thing as he likes. So you can directly hit the enemies behind you after passing through the obstacles in front. And this horn can be enchanted by Shaji with combination magic. Shaji nodded. Very good, another whole card. He took Sophia back, and today's experiments have all been completed. Shaji was about to go back to the house, when suddenly, he saw a white shadow passing by the hillside. No way. Shaji was a little confused. He was sure that he was not mistaken, but how could there be unicorns in this place? Shaji hurriedly followed. He was very curious. This is a human settlement, how could a creature like a unicorn approach casually? They all like living in the forest. As soon as Shaji walked down the hill, she saw the beautiful unicorn standing on the edge of the forest. It stood there, as if it was specially waiting for Shaji. Shaji only knew that it was coming for him, if the unicorn didn't want him to catch up. Then with their speed, it is not too easy to get rid of Shaji who is walking. But now, it just glanced at Shaji, and after realizing that he was following, it walked slowly towards the woods. Shaji just followed, and he didn't go far when he saw the second unicorn. As he went deeper into the woods, he saw more and more unicorns. Finally, when he was able to see the golden yellow unicorn cub, a unicorn that was taller and mightier than the other unicorns slowly walked in front of Shaji. In the eyes of this unicorn, Shaji saw the majesty in the house. This should be the leader of this unicorn group, and it is the one who wants to find himself. It's just that Shaji just doesn't understand why it is looking for itself. The majestic unicorn neighed a few times, but Shaji, who had the talent of a druid, easily understood what it meant. Son of nature, I am here for you. Son of nature, I am not a child of nature, you may have found the wrong person. Although Shaji spoke human language, the unicorn clearly understood. You can understand what I say, and I can understand what you say, even though they don't understand each other's language. So, you are indeed a child of nature. Shaji only thought of her druid talent. Well, druid seems to be called the child of nature. Well, I do have this talent, so what's the reason you came to find me? An ancient prophecy shows that our ethnic group can only be exempted from disaster under the protection of the Son of Nature. Prophecy. Disaster. Shaji pondered for a moment. What disaster did you encounter? The number of our group is decreasing sharply now, and it may not be long before it will disappear completely. The majestic unicorn leader actually showed a very humane sadness in his eyes. Can you tell me the reason? I know that when you come to me, you must think that I can help you in some way. Habitats are shrinking and poachers are slaughtering. In recent years, it has intensified. My tribe had hundreds of people 10 years ago, but now, including our cubs, there are only more than 30 people left. The horned beast leader looked at Shaji and said, many years ago, when we were still in our prime, we met a powerful wizard. He made a prophecy to us, saying that we would perish eventually. However, if we can find the son of nature, then we still have a glimmer of hope. May rest and recuperate under the shelter of the children of nature. Are you sure that's what the wizard said? Shaji expressed doubts. Unicorns don't have books or anything like that. They have been passed down from generation to generation, so there will inevitably be errors. I'm sure because I saw it with my own eyes and heard it with my own ears. Although I was a cub at the time. Okay, Shaji felt a little headache, although I don't know why the prophecy said that. I mean, I don't have so much space here. Shaji spread his hands. Why don't you go to the forbidden forest of Hogwarts? As far as I know, there are 10 unicorn colonies there. And the forest is very large. No, that's where we came from. The unicorn leader shook his head. The smoke of war has enveloped that place, and the centaurs have given us a prophecy, and we can't sit still. So we decided to follow the instructions of the prophecy and set off seeking the son of nature. May I know how you found me? Shaji asked curiously. This group of unicorns came here from the forbidden forest. Isn't the goal too clear? Sophia's soul, is it on your body? The unicorn leader showed sad eyes. Suddenly, Shaji released Fia, the shadow of the unicorn. The phantom of Sophia's soul approached the leader of the unicorn, neighing affectionately. Sophia is my daughter. She was murdered, but you avenged her, so she has followed you ever since. The unicorn leader looked at Shaji sadly. Just yesterday. Her spirit suddenly came back. She came to my dream, and told me that she is now with the child of nature. Quote. So, here we come. The unicorn leader continued. I am the leader of this unicorn tribe, and my name is Blackhorn. I ask you to protect us, and of course we will not let you pay in vain. I believe that we have many things that you wizards need. As long as you can provide us with the soil for survival, you can take all of them. Shaji heard unwillingness and helplessness in Blackhorn's tone. Who wants to be subservient if they can? I don't need anything from you. Shaji said gently. I won't enslave you either. Then what do you need? Blackhorn asked in surprise. Your daughter Sophia has done me a great favor, so please stay at ease. Shaji decided to let them stay. With me, no one can hurt you. To say it without humility, I do have this ability. Son of nature, your generosity worries me. Well, actually, I suddenly felt that if there were more beautiful unicorns in the place where I live, it would be a very unique scenery, wouldn't it? Blackhorn still looked at Shaji silently. Shaji sighed, and then sternly said, turn in 10 good unicorn hairs every month, or you will get out. Blackhorn heaved a sigh of relief. This way I can feel at ease. Shaji suddenly felt that something was wrong with this unicorn. Chapter 111. In front of Shaji's house. Kashandela is helping Nagini with a brush. Nagini spread out into a long worm. Maybe Kashandela should have belonged to Slytherin, so she didn't have much resistance to creatures like snakes. She has always been on good terms with Nagini. Hermione was sitting under the swing in the garden, holding a thick book and reading. The morning sun shone on her body, making her feel warm all over. Suddenly, there was a sound of horseshoes coming down the hillside. Kashandela put down the brush and looked down the hillside curiously. She wondered if a troop of cavalry came down the hillside. Hermione also put down her book and walked out of the garden. The movement at the foot of the mountain was getting louder and louder. Shaji is riding on the back of a tall unicorn, and behind him are more than 30 unicorn beasts. These unicorns, old and young, are very spectacular. Shaji turned over and got off the ground. It was his first time riding a horse, and he was not used to it, and some parts hurt from the bump. Generally speaking, we only let pure witches ride, not wizards. Blackhorn looked at Shaji with its majestic eyes. Of course, you are the child of nature, you are an exception. Why don't you want to approach the wizard? To be precise, we don't want to get close to those human beings with complicated and dirty minds. Getting close to them will make us feel very uncomfortable. We can smell the soul in their rotten hair. Blackhorn looked and walked from the hillside. Kashandela and Hermione coming down. Their minds are very pure and their souls are very clean, so we generally don't resist the approach of girls like them. Shaji heard the keyword soul, and he couldn't help asking, you can smell the human soul, so do you know where the soul is hidden in the human body? I mean, I know the soul has weight, so the soul must exist somewhere in the body. Why do you think that the soul is hidden in a certain part of the body? Blackhorn looked at Shaji with its somewhat sad majestic eyes. Your soul has always been in yourself, it is everywhere. You mean, the human body is like a balloon, and the soul is like the gas in the balloon. Shaji suddenly understood why he couldn't find the existence of the soul in his mind. What is a balloon? Blackhorn asked, puzzled. Oh, it's a human product. Does it work, function? To be precise, it is generally used as a toy. Oh, that's why I don't understand human beings. Although they have excellent creativity, they always make things that are actually useless. Shaji really wanted to refute that balloons are also very useful, but he suddenly felt that talking about this to a unicorn is actually a waste of saliva. Well, you're right. Shaji gave up arguing. Cassian, Della and Hermione have already walked down, looking at these beautiful creatures with amazement in their eyes. Shaji, where did you find so many unicorns? Hermione couldn't help asking. They come from the Forbidden Forest and come to me to seek asylum. Shaji replied briefly. I'll tell you the specifics later. Blackhorn, you can live here, even though the place is a bit small. I will cast some protective magic in the nearby forest, so that those who are malicious to you can't get close. Shaji took out her wand and walked into the depths of the woods. I'll go with you. Blackhorn followed up. I also want to know the extent of our safe activities. Blackhorn neighed again, and then a very beautiful unicorn came forward. Then he pointed his ass at Shaji. You are. Shaji looked at Blackhorn suspiciously. That's a nice girl. It's not. You. Shaji looked at Blackhorn in horror. Her tail is the most beautiful, and you can take 10 unicorn hairs from her tail as the first month's rent. Blackhorn glanced at Shaji suspiciously. You. What did you think I wanted to do just now? Me. Cough cough. Of course I know you want to pay the rent, but you don't need to be so anxious. Shaji didn't blush and her heart didn't beat. If you want to get something, you have to pay the price. Only when you accept the rent can we feel at ease. Blackhorn shook his head. In the future, my clan will take turns to provide you with high-quality unicorn fur as rent. Okay, Cassandela, could you and Hermione do me a favor, please? Use the scissors on her tail and snip 10 unicorn hairs, no more, no less. This is where the unicorn tribe lives. The rent we live here. Kashan, Della and Hermione looked at each other, then nodded. Shaji turned around and walked towards the woods. I can carry you there. In fact, I don't resist letting you ride on my back. The breath of the soul of the child of nature will not make me uncomfortable, but will make me happy. Although I can feel the composition of the soul is very complicated. Oh, I think I'd better go on foot. I don't feel very comfortable on your back. How come? There have been wizards riding on my back before, and they never said it was uncomfortable. I guess those wizards are witches, right? Oh, I probably understand why. Then let's walk. There is a forest around Shaji's house. Although it is not very big, it is very dense. Shaji arranged a lot of guardian magic learned from Mr. G in the forest. Anyone with malicious intentions cannot step into this forest. Of course, Voldemort also taught Shaji a lot of protective magic, but if Shaji followed suit, at least 2 Muggle towns would have to be slaughtered. This kind of thing, Shaji can't do now. My place is not big, so. Shaji shrugged. It's okay, my clan and I just need a safe place to recuperate. Seeing the guardian magic you cast, I know I've found the right person. Blackhorn hissed and followed Shaji. Your food, do you need me to prepare it for you? Shaji asked. Of course, it's an exchange of equal value. I'm not giving you alms. Now, Shaji has figured out how to communicate with these unicorns. It's not necessary, we'll figure it out ourselves. Okay then, within the area where I cast the spell just now, you can find a place to settle it yourself. Shaji now wants to go back and study soul magic. From a distance, Shaji saw Kashandela and Hermione happily sitting on 2 unicorns and playing. This is a very beautiful picture. However, Shaji has no intention of appreciating it now, because he feels that his research on the soul will be improved to a higher level today. At that time, even Nagini's blood curse will not be impossible to lift. Shaji was sitting on his chair, holding a bag of BB multi-flavored beans in his hand, and kept throwing the beans into his mouth. His eyes were a little blank, and he didn't taste the brown bean in his hand, whether it smelled of pepper or booger. Since the soul is like the air in a balloon, the human body is that balloon. Then the soul of a person should be in the shape of a person. This point, Shaji himself has confirmed. After returning from Blackhorn, he finally observed his own soul. The shape of his soul is exactly the same as his own body, even the scars are the same. This creates two problems for Shaji. Does the shape of the human body determine the shape of the soul? Or does the shape of the soul determine the shape of the body? This question is torturing Shaji's nerves, like which came first, the egg or the chicken. It would also make sense to say that the shape of the body determines the shape of the soul. After all, after a person dies, the injuries suffered in the body will also appear in the soul. For example, the ghost in Hogwarts, nearly headless Nick. When he was at the beginning of school, he grabbed half of his head off at the little wizard's dinner table. His head and body are only connected by a layer of skin, and his soul will always be like this, even if it turns into a ghost. So his application to join the Headless Horseman hunters was ruthlessly rejected because his head was not severed enough. However, it cannot be determined that only the shape of the body can affect the shape of the soul. In fact, a change in the soul also changes the shape of the person's body. Like Voldemort, when he returned to Hogwarts for the second time and wanted to apply to Dumbledore for the position of Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts, he was no longer as handsome as before. Because of the creation of Horcruxes, too much soul tearing, and several terrible transfigurations, his face became blurred, as if he had been burned. It is even difficult to distinguish his facial features. Of course, Shaji is not sure if the disfigurement is entirely caused by the incompleteness of the soul, or it may be the terrible transfiguration that Voldemort experienced. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed through Shaji's heart, and he seemed to have thought of something. He stood up and turned into a kitten. The omnipotent animagus is actually a human transfiguration. Shaji observed the soul in his body, and then began to transform back into human form. By the way, the reason why animagus can change back to its original form exactly is because the wizard's soul is still in human form. A bolt of lightning seemed to strike through Shaji's mind. He can change from an animal back to a human form freely, because his soul is still a human form, so he can change back at any time. Pettigrew, Peter, has been turned into a mouse for more than 10 years, but he can still turn back into a human. Because his soul is still in human form. Nagini can't change back to human form, that's because her soul has completely turned into a snake. At the beginning, under the influence of the blood curse, her soul slowly changed into the shape of a snake over time. And when Nagini's soul completely turned into the shape of a snake, she also completely turned into a snake, changing from soul to body. This is why the blood curse is so vicious, because it can twist people's souls. As for why the ghost Nick's soul bears the imprint left by the flesh, it is because the damage he received was too serious, which also hurt his soul. And those minor injuries shouldn't hurt your soul. Shaji slashed his own hand, and then carefully observed his own soul. On his soul, there are all kinds of scars all over, which are the scars left by the original torture, because it was too painful, and at the same time left a mark on the soul. But his newly drawn scars did not show on his soul. In the end, Shaji preliminarily deduced a conclusion that the change of the shape of the soul will change the shape of the human body. And to change the shape of the soul, there is only one way, that is pain. Only this kind of extreme emotion can in turn leave scars on the soul. The production of Horcruxes needs to kill people before they can successfully tear the soul. Shaji felt that killing people might just be a prelude to activating the Horcrux magic, but what really caused the tearing of the soul should be the great pain caused by the subsequent activating the magic. From this point of view, it is still very difficult to transform Nagini back into a human state. Shaji turned into a cute kitten, stretched and lay on the desk. He suddenly found that after turning into a cat, it was quite comfortable to sleep in this position. Shaji, who was in a cat state, chose a corner that happened to be sunny, lay down, and continued to think. So, does it mean that as long as Nagini's soul is pinched back into a human form, she can regain her humanity? However, even if her humanity can be regained, how can she regain her memory? If she can't get back her original memory, then even if she can turn back into a human state, she will still be in a baby state who doesn't understand anything, and even the memory of being a snake will be lost. Doing so would turn Nagini into 10 living dead. Retrieve memories. Shaji suddenly remembered the Misty Realm. His lost memory was found there, so can he enter Nagini's Misty Realm and help her find herself? Shaji only thought of Fia, the unicorn phantom. Could she help again and bring his consciousness into Nagini's trance? Just when Shaji was engrossed, suddenly, he felt his body being hugged. Cassian, Della and Hermione wanted to find Shaji, because they just helped the unicorns find a place to settle down, and wanted to tell Shaji. However, at this moment, Hermione found the cute little kitten lying on the desk. Shaji with 56,010 points of charm, even if she turns into a cat, is still the one with the highest appearance. So, the consequences are dire. Hermione picked up the cute kitten in front of her. What a cute kitten. I never thought that Shaji would have a cat. Hermione liked cats very much, especially this kind of cat with a charm value of 10, which made her completely irresistible. Della looked suspiciously at the cat whose body suddenly became stiff in front of her. Why does this cat look familiar to me? Della really knew Shaji very well. Shaji is going crazy now, he really wants to change back to human form. But, now that Hermione is holding him, and Cassandra is watching. If he returns to human form now, Cassandra will see Hermione holding him. Forget it, I'll change back when there is no one around. Shaji just covered his cat's face with his small paws. For some reason, he felt that Cassandra was about to recognize him. Cassandra's emerald green eyes narrowed slightly. She suddenly took out her wand and pointed it at Shaji. The original form is revealed. Shaji didn't react because she covered her cat's face. By the time he reacted, it was too late. Shaji in cat form quickly returned to human form. Hiss. Shaji looked at Cassandra in embarrassment, and Hermione who was still hugging her with a shocked face. What to do? Wait online, very urgent. Ahem. Shaji slowly broke free from Hermione's embrace. Actually, I can explain. When did you become animagus? And you kept it from me. Cassandra's eyes were a little dangerous. Oh, I see, you must have thought that turning into a cute kitten can trick some girls into hugging you, right? Tell me honestly, how many girls have you fooled with this look? Shaji swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty, and slowly rubbed her body towards the door. It occurred to me that I had a suitcase with enough space for unicorns to gallop in it. Don't try to escape, it's been a long time. When Shaji finally walked out of the house, he was disheveled and listless. These are the two female hooligans. Too much. They even forced themselves into the shape of a cat, and then came up to eat Rua. Shaji even suspected that she was bald. The leader of the unicorns, Blackhorn, came over, and he looked curiously at Shaji's messy appearance. Are you going out? Yes. Shaji waved her hand, and the clothes on her body were tidied up. If there is anything, I will contact you through Sophia. You know, there is a special magical connection between me and her. Blackhorn said in his usual sad tone. Understood. If there is any danger, you can contact me at any time, and I will be back right away. Shaji nodded, turned her body, and then disappeared in place. 9 Page M. At the gate of Malfoy Manor, Dobby crouched, hiding in the shadow of a flower pot next to him. Oh, bad Dobby. Dobby is a house elf. Dobby shouldn't want to be free. But the mighty Mister said. If Dobby wants to be free, he has to be here at 9 o'clock. Oh, Dobby really shouldn't have come. But, Dobby want to be free. Oh, what did Dobby say? Bad Dobby. Bad Dobby. Dobby knelt down and banged his head on the floor so hard he wanted to punish himself. Crack. There was a sound like a whip hitting the floor. Dobby hid behind the flower pot and quietly looked at the door, and it turned out to be his master, Lucius Malfoy. He tidied his clothes nervously, then smelled his clothes again, and only walked towards the door after finding no flaws. Thinking about it, if he didn't need to check his clothes, he would apparate directly to the house. Dobby rushed out to greet him. When the house elf saw his master coming home, he needed to go forward to serve him immediately. Lucius had to go to a reception tonight, but the place was a little sensitive. He didn't want Narcissa to know, so he had to check his body for any suspicious smell. Lucius drank a lot of wine tonight, his mind is a little dizzy now, and he feels a little stuffy now. He walked into the door in a daze, and he seemed to see a coat rack beside him. It seemed that he was drinking a little too much, so he didn't care why there was a coat rack at the gate, it just happened to be a little hot now. Lucius was about to take off his outer clothes, but he first took off his gloves and threw them on the coat rack. Then he was about to take off his coat, when suddenly, a gust of cool wind blew, and Lucius felt his spirit lifted. Why is there a coat rack at the gate? Lucius Malfoy, who was awake, turned his head to look, and then found Dobby holding a white glove in his hand with a look of surprise. Lucius had a bad feeling. Why was he so confused? He saw Dobby as a coat rack. Get in here, Dobby. Dobby, the master just gave Dobby a glove. Dobby's eyes widened with excitement. Dobby is free. Lucius finally came to his senses. He seemed to have done a stupid thing. Because he was drunk and confused, he released his servant in a muddle. No, that's not for you. Get out of here. Lucius wanted to make amends, but it was too late. Dobby is a free elf now. Dobby raised his chest, and slipped the glove onto his thin hand. You can no longer restrict Dobby's freedom. You stop. Crack. Dobby snapped his fingers and disappeared in place. Lucius cursed angrily, then went back angrily. In a shadow outside Malfoy Manor, Shaji put away her wand. For Shaji, dealing with a drunk Lucius Malfoy only needed a simple confusion spell. When he touched Dobby's hand, he predicted that Lucius Malfoy would appear here at this point. I thought I was going to use the Imperious Curse. Shaji shook her head disdainfully. Shaji cast a spell on Lucius to release Dobby, and he didn't think there was anything wrong with what he did. Shaji believes that any soul that longs for freedom should not be bound. What's more, Dobby is different from other elves, he is an elf longing for freedom. Moreover, Lucius was originally a Death Eater, and spent a huge amount of money to bribe the Ministry of Magic, saying that he was controlled by the Imperious Curse, so he was not thrown into Azkaban. Lucius is not a good person at all, so Shaji has no psychological burden. Shaji even cheated Voldemort, so what's the point of cheating a Death Eater? With Shaji's current level of magic, it is still very easy to deduce the destination of Dobby's apparition, and he can also guess where he will go. Privet Drive. Dobby's tiny figure appeared here. There was a look of excitement on his face, and now, there was nothing stopping him from telling Harry Potter about the big plot. It seems that you have successfully obtained your freedom. Shaji's gentle voice came from behind Dobby. Dobby was taken aback, turned around and found that it was Shaji. He shrieked gratefully, "Oh, good sir, thanks to your help, Dobby is now a free elf. So, now you can finally tell the conspiracy of your former master without any scruples." Of course, Dobby will tell you and Mr. Harry Potter about it now. Sha Li Qian's knows that Dobby was the house elf of the Malfoy family before, and he can overhear many conversations of the master's family at any time. And when Lucius conspired at home, he didn't shy away from Dobby at all. So Dobby heard everything without saying a word. Lucius is going to mix Voldemort's diary from his student days into Ginny Weasley's old textbook, and ask her to bring the diary into Hogwarts. However, Lucius Malfoy didn't know that the diary was a Horcrux. He only knew that it was the diary of Voldemort's student days, it was cast with black magic, and inherited Voldemort's will. If this diary flows into Hogwarts, it will inevitably lead to many dangerous things. Dobby even found out about the Chamber of Secrets from Lucius Malfoy, when Myrtle died when the Chamber of Secrets was opened. That's why in the original book, Dobby said that Hogwarts will repeat the tragedy of that year. That's why Dobby desperately wanted to stop Harry from going to Hogwarts, which would be full of dangers. Shaji and Dobby find Harry together, and Dobby tells him everything he knows. Harry said angrily, "We should break the news to Professor Dumbledore immediately." Shaji nodded, expressing her agreement, but now Lucius Malfoy has not really started to act, so it is still impossible to catch him. It is said that Mr. Weasley has searched Lucius Malfoy's house several times, but did not find any valuable dark magic props. Dobby, do you know where Lucius Malfoy's diary is hidden? Dobby doesn't know. Dobby has never seen that diary, it's just that the Lord Mr. there. Shaji nodded. Mr. Weasley couldn't find it, and Dobby didn't know where it was. So now there is no way to act directly. Just wait and see now. Shaji smiled. Waiting for what? Harry didn't understand. What was there to wait for? Shaji laughed. We'll just wait and see if Lucius Malfoy will be stupid. Dobby had now left the Malfoys' house, and Lucius, if he had been smart enough, would have realized that Dobby had probably heard all about his plot. If Shaji is just Malfoy, then she will definitely not follow the original plan. Even if she still sticks to the original plan, she must get rid of Dobby. Of course, if it were Shaji planning some shady conspiracy, he would never let anyone know about it. Not even the closest ones. Of course, I'll send a letter to Professor Dumbledore to tell him about it when I get back. We'll just have to be prepared. Well, that's the only way to go now. Harry nodded helplessly. Be careful when Lucius Malfoy touches Ginny's books. I really didn't expect such a person to exist. He actually planned to mix such a dangerous dark magic item into Ginny's book in order to get revenge on Mr. Weasley. Let Ginny bring it into school in the textbook. Dobby has already told Harry and Shaji everything he overheard. So Harry knew that Lucius Malfoy wanted to get revenge on Mr. Weasley for raiding his house, so he planned to find a way to get Ginny Weasley to bring the diary into the school. If his plan succeeds, Ginny will definitely not end well. CFDJ. If I'm not mistaken, next semester's Defense Against the Dark Arts textbooks will be very expensive. I think, Harry, you should be able to give Ginny a set to thank the Weasley family for their kindness to you. Shaji seemed casual said. Harry's eyes lit up. That's right, when the time comes, I'll be able to exchange Ginny's old books mixed with dark magic books. But, why don't we just tell Mr. Weasley about it? We don't seem to have to so sneaky. If Mr. Weasley knew about this, as a father who loves his children deeply, he would definitely rush to Malfoy Manor and break Lucius' nose. I support him very much. If it were me, I might be more excited than him. Shaji patiently explained to Harry. However, Lucius Malfoy has not actually started to act yet. Dobby's words alone cannot be used as evidence. Mr. Weasley may get into trouble for this. And Mr. Weasley made such a fuss. We want to get the book diary is not so easy. That diary, for us, is very important. There is another reason that Shaji didn't say. He doesn't want more people to know the existence of that diary. Maybe it will be useful in the future. After all, as long as it is in his hands, he can destroy the diary at any time. Harry could only nod gloomily. Well, if Mr. Weasley makes a fuss, we'll never get that diary. Never get it. Shaji raised the corners of his mouth slightly. That's not the case. I'm just trying to stay within the rules. Professor Dumbledore wants me to. If the rules can't do it, maybe he could come and give him the Imperius Curse, or just Cruciatus. Shaji felt that Mr. Lucius Malfoy must be familiar with this spell. However, if I transformed into that socket monster and suddenly appeared in front of Lucius Malfoy, would he be scared to pee immediately? It seems that it is not impossible, because Shaji detected through the soul fragments that Voldemort's remnant soul has now returned to the Albanian forest, knowing nothing about the outside world. Perhaps, this would be very interesting. The corners of Shaji's mouth could not help but rise slightly. Seeing Shaji's cheerful smile, Harry couldn't help but shudder. The last time he saw Shaji smiling like this, he was being chased by a stone jeep. Dobby, you are a free elf now, so what are your plans for the future? Shaji asked Dobby. When Dobby heard this question, he couldn't help being stunned. That's right. Dobby is free, but where should Dobby go? Or Dobby should find a job. But, very few people would give a job to an expelled pixie. They'd much rather have Dobby serve them for free. Dobby couldn't help muttering to himself, but he was going to find a job nonetheless, and maybe he would meet a kind wizard who would pay him a salary. I do have a job here, Dobby, would you like it? Che said. What kind of job? Dobby immediately became excited. I recently settled into a new home where Dobby could come and work for me. Dobby's interest immediately sank, but Dobby finally became a free elf. Don't want to. Dobby thought Shaji only wanted him to be a house elf in Shaji's family, but Dobby didn't want to lose his hard-won freedom. Of course you are a free elf, because I hired you, not enslaved you. Shaji said seriously. I am willing to pay you a weekly salary of 25 galleons per week, and every Saturday and Sunday are your holidays. Food and accommodation are included during work, and there is 1 week of paid annual leave every year. The work is easy, and there are holidays, great staff meals, lots of benefits, first come, first served. Shaji's seductive voice kept coming into Dobby's ears. Mr. Shaji is willing to pay Dobby 25 galleons a week. And also give Dobby a vacation. Oh, Dobby was already moved to tears. He has been living a life worse than a pig and a dog in Malfoy's house. It would be fine if it was any other house elf, but Dobby is a unique house elf. He has a very strong sense of autonomy. In this group, he is destined to be the special one. So when he heard that Shaji was willing to hire him with such a generous price, his excitement was indescribable. Shaji's position in his heart immediately became second only to Harry Potter. Of course, and in my house, you can live in a spacious room, not in a cupboard. Shaji continued. Oh, Dobby's room. Dobby stared in disbelief. Dobby don't have to live in the cupboard anymore. Perhaps, he is the first house elf in history to have his own room. Of course, Dobby, remember, you are my employee, not a slave, and you don't need to be so cautious in front of me. Shaji continued, oh, by the way, my employees are all very beautiful. Of course, it's a full set of work clothes, including hats, gloves, socks, and small leather shoes. When Dobby hears about the clothes, little stars had already started to appear in his eyes. At this time, Shaji's status had even caught up with Harry Potter's status in his heart. Well, I am your boss and you are my employee. At the same time, we are also friends. So of course I can send you clothes. Shaji said seriously, at that time, you can also use your own salary to send you dress yourself up and throw away that dirty pillowcase. You are already a free elf, you don't need this slave sign anymore. Dobby stared wide-eyed, immersed in the vision of a bright future. So, Dobby, would you like to come and work with me? Oh, of course Dobby would. It's just, the salary. Is it because your salary is not enough? Then I will give you more. Shaji, who has countless wealth, is extremely self-willed. Oh, no. Dobby doesn't think he deserves such a salary. Dobby only needs 1 canute for a week. Dobby said pitifully. 25 galleons a week's salary, it scares the hell out of it. I refuse. Shaji said, I'm a big boss, if others find out that I pay my employees such a small salary, wouldn't it be embarrassing for me? In the end, Dobby had no choice but to happily accept Shaji's solicitation while trembling. Harry looked dumbfounded on the sidelines. He thought he was already rich, but he didn't expect Shaji to be richer than him. Although he was also willing to hire Dobby, he would not give him 25 gallons for a week. Shaji, where did you get so much money? Harry asked curiously. He knew that Shaji was an orphan, and he didn't even know who his parents were. So Shaji is different from himself, he doesn't have parents who can leave him a golden mountain. Remember my big snake Nagini? Harry nodded. Her venom is worth 500 galleons per ounce. I've saved several barrels. Harry. Shaji had already prepared a handsome little suit, a pair of white gloves, a nice hat, and a pair of shiny leather shoes. Dobby changed into this outfit excitedly, as if he had transformed into an elf. Well, yes, you are going to be our housekeeper in the future, a good housekeeper, how can you lose a good outfit? Shaji nodded. Dobby, you're so handsome, Harry complimented sincerely. After all, people depend on clothes, and horses depend on saddles. After wearing this new outfit, Dobby's energy and spirit immediately changed. Dobby was almost overjoyed to hear Harry compliment him. Don't cry, it will stain the new clothes. Shaji said leisurely on the side. Dobby stopped crying immediately. Dobby doesn't cry, and Dobby won't cry in the future. He said, puffing out his small chest. Harry, then let's go first. You must come to my house as a guest. You must know that Ron also lives near my house. You can also come to his house as a guest at any time. After hearing this, Harry wished he could move to Shaji's house right away. Although the Dursleys treated him much better, getting along with them was not as happy as getting along with his own friends. But thinking that I have to live at my aunt's house for more than 2 weeks before I can go to Shaji's house, I can't help feeling a little sad. Don't be lazy at home. When you come to my place, I will be assessed. Shaji dragged Dobby away after saying that. Just left Harry himself at the Dursleys, disheveled in the wind. Assessment. Harry swallowed hard. It shouldn't be life-threatening, probably. When Shaji took Dobby back to the door, he felt that his head was getting bigger. Because he heard Cassandela and Hermione arguing right at the door. I can't believe that the house elves are being treated so unfairly. They are like slaves to the teachers. But they like this. If you raise wages and benefits with them, they will think it is an insult to them. Every creature with an independent mind should not be anyone's slave. Even house elves need to be respected, and they need to be paid for their work. If Cafe heard what you said, he would definitely spit at you. Is it the house elf in your family? But I really don't understand. No race is born to serve as slaves to other races. You should have checked the information, Hermione. They were a race defeated by wizards, and then received enslavement education from generation to generation, so they became what they are today. So we should liberate them, shouldn't we? We should give them their rights. But, Hermione, we'll never wake someone who's pretending to be asleep. They now think it's a pleasure to work for their master for free. If we don't do anything, then of course they will take the service of wizards for granted. Because they are born with this kind of education. Hermione, your idea is impossible to succeed. You are standing in the shoes of the house elves, and then speaking for them with human thinking. But you ignore the vested interests. They will not agree with your idea of. So, are you one of those vested interests? Yes, Hermione, I'm also one of the vested interests, because I also have house elves in my family. From my standpoint, I would think that helping the elves to win their rights is a waste of time and a laborious task. Please. Besides, before you promote your ideas to those of us with vested interests, shouldn't you promote your ideas to those elves? If they don't agree with themselves, even if we agree, what's the use? Hermione fell silent, but she could hear that she was not convinced. At this time, Shaji walked into the house with Dobby. Shaji, I want to tell you something. Hermione's idea was not supported by Chandela, so she wanted to ask Shaji's opinion. After all, Shaji has no vested interests, he has no house elves. Just when Hermione was thinking this, she saw Dobby behind Shaji. Chandela also saw this well-dressed house elf, Merlin. She had never seen such a well-dressed house elf. Ahem, I'm sorry to disturb your debate. Let me introduce you. This is a new member of our family, Dobby. Dobby, say hello to everyone. They are all my good friends. Dobby came out from behind Shaji somewhat restrainedly, and said in a sharp voice, hello. My name is Dobby. I will work for Master Shaji from now on. Hermione looked at Shaji, her face full of disbelief, her eyes were a little red. Shaji, I didn't expect you to be such a person. Huh, what kind of person am I? Shaji was a little confused, but after taking a look at Dobby, he understood what Hermione had misunderstood. Listen, things are not what you imagined. Dobby, Shaji explained. Not what I imagined. You brought back a house elf. And I heard it. You're officially enslaving it from today. Don't you know how miserable the situation is for house elves? They pay so much labor, but you don't get any remuneration, you don't have any rights, you don't even have your own private space. Hermione was very emotional. I thought you shouldn't be such a person, but I didn't expect. Dobby. Dobby forbids you to say that about Master Shaji. Dobby summoned up his courage and stood in front of Shaji. Chandela stared at her emerald green eyes in surprise. She had never seen a house elf who dared to intervene when the masters were talking. Hermione also looked at Dobby in surprise, but she understood what these house elves thought, because they were influenced by enslaved education, so even if their masters were rude to them, they would take it for granted, and Dobby would take it for themselves. The master, Shaji, only talks, which is quite normal. Hermione looked at Shaji, ready to patiently persuade him to give up his slavery to Dobby. But Dobby went on to say, Dobby is a free elf. Dobby is not enslaved by anyone. Kindly, Great Master Shaji, set Dobby free tonight. And generously hired Dobby by. Dobby is an employee of Master Shaji. Master Shaji also said that Dobby is his good friend. Dobby has a weekly salary of 25 galleons every week, and there are 2 holidays every week. Master Shaji also prepared a beautiful and spacious room for Dobby. The kind Master Shaji also prepared beautiful clothes for Dobby. So, Dobby doesn't allow anyone to speak ill of his boss or his friends. Dobby was very emotional, and he didn't allow Shaji to be slandered by anyone. You mean, you were hired by Shaji? Hermione began to stutter, but. Hermione, Shaji has been referring to Dobby as he all the time, but you have been calling the house elf it. Do you really put these poor little guys in the same position in your heart? Cassandra said with a sigh. Hermione was speechless. Cassandra saw Hermione's embarrassment, and she took the initiative to change the subject. Shaji, where did you find this elf? I haven't seen such a thoughtful house elf. Strictly speaking, his thoughtful behavior will definitely be affected by other elves. The spit of the elves. Oh, Dobby is an elf longing for freedom, so tonight I specially thought of a way to free him. Shaji said lightly. It happened that our family lacked a butler with good professional skills, so I hired him. Cassandra, can you help me arrange Dobby in his room? There are so many rooms on the first floor, just let him choose by himself. Cassandra nodded, and let Dobby follow her to choose a room. I'm sorry, Shaji, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Hermione's face was so red that it was about to bleed. Oh my god, I misunderstood him and scolded him. I'm such a girl. Hermione, can we talk? Shaji said calmly. Oh, of course. Hermione awkwardly followed Shaji into his study. The phoenix Yasili was dozing in her nest, and the owl Snowball was also hiding in Yasili's nest, and they got to know each other very well. Shaji asked Hermione to sit down, and then sat down at her own desk, crossing her hands, and made a big guy sitting in the same style as Dumbledore. How about a glass of iced lemonade? Hermione nodded. She really needed a cold drink to cool her face right now. She lowered her fluffy head, not daring to look into Shaji's eyes. With a light touch of Shaji's right hand on the desk, a glass of iced sweat appeared on the desk. He pushed the iced lemonade in Hermione's face. Hermione, I probably understand what you're thinking. Hermione immediately pricked up her ears. Shaji could only liberate Dobby and give Dobby a job with salary and holidays, then he must understand her own thoughts. I have to say, Hermione, you are indeed a kind girl. Others don't pay attention to the plight of the house elves. Hermione smiled, but still didn't dare to look at Shaji. So, do you agree with me? Of course, there is nothing wrong with your idea, and it is something worthy of recognition. After all, no free soul should be bound. Hermione showed a sweet smile. Sure enough, Shaji can understand my thoughts. However, Cassandra didn't agree with me. I don't think other wizards would agree with me either. Hermione said with some disappointment. In fact, she also understands that it is very difficult to liberate the house elves, and not many people will agree with her idea. Of course, your standpoint is totally different from theirs. Your thinking level is deeper than any of them. It's also greater. Shaji looked at Hermione's dark pupils, which were slightly bright. Because many people think about issues from the standpoint of their own ethnic group and their own collective interests. There are very few people like you who can jump out of their own ethnic group and think about problems from the overall situation. Hermione looked at Shaji with some puzzlement, not quite understanding what he meant. Because from the perspective of all intelligent creatures, enslaving a race of intelligent life is very inappropriate and wrong. And most of them think from the perspective of wizards, so they don't think that enslaving house elves are a big deal. And trying to fight for house elves is a thankless job. Yes, because they are all vested interests, so. Hermione said disappointedly. Not exactly. Hermione, do you remember why the goblins are making a fuss? Because they're fighting for the right to use wands. So you understand. Shaji looked at Hermione calmly. Understand what? Any oppressed race, including humans. If you want to fight for your own rights, there is only one way. What? How? Didn't the goblins set an example? You mean war, but we will have a peaceful solution. Hermione, you were born into a Muggle family. You should know something about the history of Muggles. For example, human beings themselves, in the history of mankind, how many times have various interest groups lost blood in order to obtain the corresponding rights and interests of their respective classes? Can it be completed? Hermione was at a loss for words. Now you think it is difficult to fight for the rights and interests of the house elves among the wizards, but if, in the future, there are more elves with unique ideas like Dobby among the house elves, and they start to really fight for their own group. When fighting for their rights and interests, the resistance they encounter will be tens of thousands of times greater than the resistance you encounter now. Shaji continued, at that time, there will be only one final solution, and that is war. If you don't show your fangs, it's impossible for others to sit down and discuss your rights with you calmly. Shaji turned her head and looked at the night outside the window. Whether it is a house elf or a group of wizards living in the cracks of Muggle society, if they want to gain rights and interests, they all need to show their fangs. Why do weak countries have no diplomacy? Because you have no qualifications to negotiate with others. Weakness is the original sin. If the development of the wizarding world continues to stagnate like it is now, then when the Muggles discover the existence of wizards in the future, will the rare wizards really be able to withstand the persecution of the Muggles? At that time, powerful wizards may be spared, but those weak wizards will definitely suffer. Not all wizards are Grindelwald and Dumbledore. There are also many weak wizards who can't even release the iron armor curse. Many people don't want to see the day when the house elves start a war. So, although your idea, Hermione, is good and correct, it will not be accepted by most people, Shaji said. I can't do anything about this kind of thing, so I can only do my best to help those little elves who are really awakened and want to be free, such as Dobby. Hermione understood Shaji's meaning. If the house elves were really awakened and wanted to gain rights, then there would definitely be a war. So when the time comes, will she be on the side of the house elves, or on the side of the wizards? Or, all she can do is to advocate that wizards treat house elves better. Seeing that Hermione was lost in thought, Shaji didn't say anything more. Smart people are always easy to get into a corner. There is a big gap between idealism and realism. People hope that what happens in reality is what idealism imagines. But reality often follows the process of realism. The prosperity of the world is for profit, and the chaos of the world is for profit. Most people are unwilling to do things that are not beneficial. This is the reality. We all know that it is not correct to treat house elves like this, but not many people will fight for their rights, because this matter does not have any benefits for many people. This is the truth. After sending the preoccupied Hermione back to her room to rest, Shaji went back to the desk and wrote a letter. He wanted to write to Mr. G about some of the things he thought of just now. He felt that there were many things that could only be interesting if he talked with Mr. G, and only Mr. G could understand some of his thoughts best, not even Dumbledore. Not to mention Voldemort, a terrorist who only cared about himself. For example, as mentioned in the letter he just wrote to Mr. G, he must never disclose to Dumbledore in advance the idea of developing armaments that belong entirely to wizards. Shaji just watched the paper airplane fly away. Suddenly, he heard movement behind him. So, Dobby has chosen his staff dormitory. Shaji turned around with a smile. Kashan Della pouted. I heard Dobby say everything you did tonight. You used the confusion curse on Lucius Malfoy. Yes, Dobby needs freedom, and I need Dobby. Very reasonable. Only Lucius Malfoy's injured world is done. Shaji shrugged. Such an interesting thing. You should take me with you. Kashan Della expressed her dissatisfaction. By the way, I overheard what you said to Hermione just now, and I thought you would tell her straight up that she was wrong. Her thinking is actually not wrong, but her thinking is too idealistic. In other words, it is this profit-seeking world that is wrong, not her. HMPH, you still think highly of her. True too. Tisk, hasty. In the following days, Shaji devoted herself to the study of the soul. He also wrote to Dumbledore and Mr. G to ask some questions. Shaji even wrote to Professor McGonagall for advice, asking her about whether the soul can be transformed by transfiguration. It turned out that Professor McGonagall almost sent him a howler letter. Transfiguration of the human body is extremely dangerous, let alone the more important soul. Professor McGonagall warned Shaji not to die. Shaji rubbed her temples and walked out from the study. There are some key issues that remain unresolved. He didn't dare to lift the blood curse on Nagini now. Shaji had to make sure that while recreating Nagini's soul into human form, she also found her memory hidden in the trance. Otherwise Nagini may lose consciousness forever. Shaji believes that Nagini's complete recovery will be of great help to him. Thinking about how long Nagini has lived, the magic power accumulated by the wizards who survived that era must be very impressive. A little training is a powerful boost. Of course, it was only for this reason that Shaji spared no effort to solve the blood curse, and it was definitely not because of the beauty of the person's body. Shaji thinks that she is not lustful at all, and she doesn't like any beautiful big sister at all, let alone a lolicon. Just when Shaji suddenly had this thought in his mind, he saw a little loli at the foot of the hill. A girl about his age was riding leisurely on the back of a unicorn, holding a magazine upside down in her hand. She has long light golden hair, fair skin and delicate features. There was a blurred feeling in the soft eyes, as if they were out of focus. There is also a string of strange necklaces hanging around her neck, which seem to be made of different types of wine bottle corks. Hello, she greeted Shaji very politely. Her voice was so ethereal that it sounded like she was singing. Hello. Shaji looked at the unicorns with some surprise. They didn't seem to have any resistance to this girl's existence, just like old friends for many years. My name is Luna Lovegood. I live around here. Are you the owner of this house? Yes, my name is Shaji. Only then did Shaji realize, no wonder she looks so familiar. It turned out to be Luna, okay, or the movie version of Luna. Shaji, who is not a lolicon, is not excited at all. He remembered that the Lovegoods did live near here. At the last banquet, because they did not know the Lovegood family, they were not invited. It's strange, unicorns generally don't let wizards approach. But they don't mean to resist you. Luna looked at Shaji curiously. Maybe it's because I'm their charter. Shaji said hesitantly. I think they like you very much. Luna jumped off the unicorn's back. The movements are brisk and lively, like a little fairy. Shaji felt that she had no clue anyway, so she simply chatted with this little girl who was later called a crazy girl. I found that there are a lot of harassing horseflies coming in and out of your head. You must have a lot of troubles. Luna found a lawn and sat down. She put aside the magazine in her hand. On the cover was written the name of the magazine, Quick Tune. The harassment gadfly, is that the kind of creature that can mess with people's minds? Luna's eyes lit up. Have you seen the Quibbler? I haven't read it, but I guessed it from what you said. You said I have a bugger in my head, so I must have a lot of troubles. Then I recommend you to take a look, it's very interesting. She handed over the Quibbler in her hand. Shaji took it and opened it casually. What kind of animal is the horned snorkel? Have you seen it? The habitat of the crooked snorkel is in Sweden. It has long curved horns and a curved nose. It looks like a poison horned beast. Of course, I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but my dad said. This creature is real. Quote, Shaji looked at the cover of the magazine. Your father is Xenophilius Lovegood. Yes, he's the editor of the Quibbler. Oh, sorry for your disrespect. Shaji flipped through the Quibbler, while waving his magic wand casually. Suddenly, a small stone on the ground slowly began to deform. Luna's eyes were immediately attracted by the pebbles on the ground. The small stone was slowly elongated, and then 4 legs grew out. Then there are long horns and a curved nose. After a while, a palm-sized strange animal appeared in front of Luna snorting. When Luna saw this strange creature, there was a special look in her eyes. Is the horned snork supposed to look like this? Shaji put down her wand, pinched her chin, and observed the strange creature that she transformed. I don't know, because I haven't seen it before, but it should look like this. Luna tilted her head and looked at the creature in front of her. You are amazing. Just hearing the description, you transformed the appearance of the horned snoring beast. You must not have seen this kind of creature. I've never seen it. To be precise, this is the first time I've heard of such a creature. Shaji suddenly saw the unicorn leader Blackhorn strolling by. Uncle Blackhorn, you have lived a long time, have you seen this kind of creature? Blackhorn came over, looked at the strange creature in front of him, and then said in his unique, sad tone, this is a poison horn with its nose and horn crooked. What has he gone through? It's so pitiful. By the way, don't call me uncle, the impact is not very good. Shaji was directly amused by Blackhorn. Luna actually couldn't understand what Heijao said, and she didn't know why Shaji suddenly twitched with laughter. But smiles are contagious, so she smiled sweetly, too. She suddenly felt that Shaji, a good-looking boy in front of her, seemed to have a demented aura. You seem to understand what they say. Yes, I can understand. He just asked me if the poison-horned beast had its nose and horn crooked by someone. Ha ha ha. Then Luna laughed again, this time for real. Shaji didn't know why. She seemed to chat with the crazy girl a few more times, and then she became crazy too. Does he have the potential to go mad? But such a relaxed smile also made his tired brain relax for a while. You said, if there is a person who wakes up and suddenly finds that he has lost all his previous memories. Does that mean that the previous self has actually died from that moment? And the newborn person now has the same memory as before. Does it have anything to do with that person? Shaji asked suddenly while lying on the lawn. I think that this person is still the same person from before. Although the memory is temporarily lost, it must still exist in a certain place and will not disappear. One day, you will find them back. Wait for you to retrieve the memory at that time, you will find that you are still the same you. Luna also lay down, looking at the blue sky. Because sometimes, even if people lose their memory, they still subconsciously make the same choices as before. Memories can never be lost. Then the memories lost in the past can also be combined with the present memories. Yeah, isn't that what I am? Shaji mumbling to himself. Many doubts in his mind suddenly had answers, and Shaji, who was completely relaxed, fell asleep just like that. When Shaji woke up, the sky was already full of stars, and Luna was already gone, only standing by his side. Seeing that Shaji woke up, Dobby said happily, Miss Wally told me not to wake up Master Shaji, let Master Shaji have a good rest. So Dobby is here to accompany Master Shaji. Because there are often some nasty little bugs. Shaji just smiled, are wizards afraid of mosquitoes? Dobby, today is Saturday, it's your holiday, you don't need to go to work. Dobby thinks that it's not part of his job to help his friends drive away mosquitoes. Dobby stared at his big eyes and said seriously. Yes, we are friends. Shaji only looked at the sky, tonight is just the right time for barbecue. Dobby, have you ever eaten barbecue? Quote. If Master Shaji is talking about barbecue, Dobby has never eaten it, but Dobby has seen it. Then let's have a barbecue for supper tonight. Think of it as our company's first team building. Shaji doesn't expect Dobby to understand what team building is, he just needs to let Dobby know that he can have a big meal tonight, that's enough. Shaji and Dobby were grilling meat outside the house. Hermione looked at Shaji with some resentment. Snacking at night will make you gain weight. You seduce me like this. I won't be able to bear it. The meat grilled by Shaji is really delicious. It's okay, come out and eat something. Only when you are full can you lose weight. Kashandela was wearing pajamas, leaning against the door frame with her arms folded, her face full of disdain. I don't eat such inelegant things as barbecue. It's just that she secretly swallowed her saliva but couldn't hide it from Shaji's eyes. Are you really not going to eat it? Shaji picked up a bunch of delicious kebabs, and took a big mouthful happily. The grilled meat with cumin is not too lip-smacking. After Shaji licked another bunch, he stuffed another big bunch for Dobby. This touched Dobby badly. This was the first time he ate money is good barbecue. When he was at the Malfoys ate the leftovers and would rather throw them away than let them elves eat. Because they think house elves are dirty, lowly things that don't deserve to touch the food they eat. But they never considered this when they ate the meals made by these lowly creatures. They thought, well, if I find out that I've gained weight, I'll settle with you. Hermione finally couldn't resist, rushed out and picked up the grill and ate it. Take a bite, and the mouth is full of oil. What about you, Cassandela? Cassandela turned her head away, looking dismissive. I remember you had the same expression in Albania before, and you ate more than anyone else. Shaji laughed. You, Cassandela broke in a second. Okay, let's eat something. Shaji forcibly pulled Cassandela over, and stuffed the meat skewers into her hands. HMPH. I didn't voluntarily eat such a rude food like yours, bitter. Ah, right. Since Hermione went back to think for a night by herself last time, she finally didn't dig into the corners anymore. But she didn't give up the idea of helping the house elves either. It's just that her thinking has changed, and it's no longer the idea of wanting to completely liberate the house elves. Instead, he settled for the next best thing and embarked on the road of calling for the kindness of house elves. This has to be said to be a concession from idealism to realism. After the knot was untied, Hermione was not as aggressive as before. It's just that she was very kind to Dobby, so good that even Shaji couldn't help being envious. Dobby was touched again. He felt that Shaji's home was heaven, because he had never had so many people treat him well. So Dobby's work enthusiasm is very high, and compared with before, he is more and more confident. Shaji will not underestimate Dobby, because he knows that the elf's magic is also very powerful and unique, but this point has been gradually ignored by wizards. Sometimes, Shaji would also ask Dobby where there are still elves who are wandering and dismissed by their masters, or in other words, elves who have the same ideas as Dobby and yearn for freedom. To be able to raise an army purely of house elves would be strong. After another 2 days, Shaji had made all the preparations, and he was going to completely lift Nagini's blood curse just today. First of all, he wants to enter Nagini's twilight illusion, and then find her memory when she was a human. After combining her human memories with those of the snake, Shaji began to reshape her soul. But after all, Nagini has been a snake for many years, and it will be very difficult to find her humanity, and even if she finds it, the time for her human memory to combine with the snake's memory will be very short. Shaji needs to seize this short time point to complete soul reshaping. The blood curse is too vicious, and it is necessary to gather soul magic masters and transfiguration masters to act together and cooperate tacitly to have a theoretical possibility of lifting it. Luckily, Shaji had both of them, and he was the only one to shoot the whole process, so there was no problem with the tacit understanding. Shaji asked Dobby to guard her. If Nagini went crazy, she hoped that Dobby could restrain her with magic. He didn't want half of his head to be bitten off by Nagini after he failed. Hermione and Cassiandella were kicked out of the room by Shaji's excuse that there were too many people and it was easy to get distracted. Shaji nodded to Dobby, then turned to look at Nagini. Hiss. Trust me, what I'm going to do next will only benefit you, but it may be a little painful. Hiss. I believe you won't hurt me, but if I have the possibility of going crazy next time, you should lock me up in advance so that I won't hurt you. Shaji was a little moved. What a kind and sunny snake, how could Voldemort have caused such harm? It seems that if you are close to vermilion, you will be red, and if you are close to ink, you will be black. If Nagini follows him, a sunny and kind boy, the result will naturally be different. Shaji had a wave of self-indulgence, and then officially entered the working state. He first cast a sleeping spell, which put Nagini into a deep sleep. Sophia. Shaji then took out his wand, and the phantom of a unicorn flashed in front of the heavy car. Shaji immersed her consciousness in her soul, and the soul magic was activated. Then Shaji's soul entered Nagini's head together with Sophia's soul. Shaji suddenly felt that he had been drawn into a gloomy forest. He knew that this was Nagini's current dream, and there was still a long way to go from her blurred illusion. However, Shaji, who is a soul body, is also in danger in this forest. He faces the attack of the beast that appeared in Nagini's dream. This is also the first hurdle Shaji has to face. Sure enough, after following Sophia for a while, Shaji appeared in front of a huge monster. Shaji has seen illustrations of it in the book Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. This turned out to be a poisonous leopard. It is described in the book that although the poison sac leopard has a huge body, it moves quietly. Its breath can cause deadly diseases, enough to destroy entire villages. If you want to subdue a poison leopard, you need more than 100 skilled wizards to join forces. Shaji frowned. She didn't expect to meet a big guy when she came in. If it is in reality, I really don't feel that Leibao is a threat at all. But this is different in Nagini's dream, it has inherited all the attack methods in reality. But Shaji's ability has been greatly reduced. Fortunately, it was Shaji CFDF who came in. If he were to change to another wizard, let alone resist, he would not even be able to use magic. Shaji raised her hand and said, I think I can do magic. Then Shaji felt the magic flow in his body again. I think, I have a wand. A pitch-black magic wand suddenly appeared in Shaji's hand. In one's own dream, one can actually have one's wishes come true, but if it is in someone else's dream, then one needs an extremely strong will to achieve the level of one's wish in someone else's dream. Fortunately, Shaji's will is strong enough, so he can do it, otherwise, this is only the first step, and he will go back home. Shaji's druid talent also does not affect the poisonous leopard in the dream. Ripples appeared on the body of the poisonous leopard. Roar. The sky-shaking roar resounded throughout the dream forest. Then the poison sac leopard pounced on it. Avada Kedavra. The green light flickered, illuminating the entire dream forest. When Shaji finally followed Sophia to find the white mist door, Shaji was already covered in blood, which made him look like a demon. He had a great time killing just now, even though he knew that those beasts were all fake. Shaji stepped into the fog door one step at a time. Sophia is still leading the way, and it can accurately find the true location of the owner of the illusion. The blood stains on Shaji's body completely disappeared when he first entered the illusion. At this time, as Shaji continued to deepen, the surrounding white mist suddenly turned blood red. Shaji frowned slightly. Are these the power of the blood curse? The red mist turned into blood-red corpses, and then rushed towards him quickly. Shaji threw a killing curse casually and knocked down a yin corpse, but after the blood-red yin corpse turned into mist and dispersed, it immediately reassembled into a new yin corpse, which seemed to be even stronger. Shaji raised the corners of his mouth slightly, looking fearlessly at the swarming yin corpses. Vulcan leads the way. 2 huge walls of fire instantly rose from Shaji's left and right sides. Fired up all pussies and made a clean path. The wall of fire is faint blue, but in the faint blue, there is a distinct orange-red. This is combination magic, and the materials are Grindelwald's Fiercefire curse plus Professor Dumbledore's Vulcan to open the way. The combination of the 2 big moves of the 2 old men really produced a very terrifying effect. All the blood-red mist was burned away by Fanfire in an instant. The surrounding fog also turned white again. Shaji only knows that the remaining blood curse has been completely wiped out. He put away Fanfire and set foot on the way forward again. Not long after, she found a young woman in a black skirt curled up under a big tree made of white mist. On her body, red vines were constantly turning into fly ash. It seems that not long ago, there were countless blood-red vines wrapped around her body. Shaji watched those vines gradually dissipate, and he understood that the curse of the blood curse had been completely removed. He shook the beautiful woman in a black dress, trying to wake her up. Only when she was fully awake could she regain her previous memories. Nagini's eyelids trembled slightly, and then slowly opened. She looked around and immediately saw the boy standing in front of her. "Hello, Nagini," the boy said with a gentle smile. "Hello, Nagini." Shaji greeted the beauty in front of her with a smile. "Who are you? Where is this place?" Nagini looked around suspiciously. She remembered that once she suddenly transformed into a snake automatically, and then she couldn't remember anything. "Time is running out. Please follow me. I will tell you the whole story on the way." Shaji smiled. Nagini stood up ignorantly, and walked forward behind Shaji. The boy in front of him has a strange affinity that seems to make everyone believe his words. "Do you remember that you have the hereditary, blood curse?" "I remember. Of course I do. You mean, yes, you have completely turned into a snake and have lived in the forests of Albania for a long time. I met you a year ago. I was already a snake when you met me. Yes, it just so happens that I have the talent of Parseltongue, so I can talk to you, and you are willing to follow me." Parseltongue, I've heard of this talent. Legend has it that Slytherin has this talent, and passed this talent on to his descendants through blood. Najijong looked at Sha Chen suspiciously. "Don't look at me like that. I don't have half a nad relationship with Slytherin. Although wizards who can speak Parseltongue are rare, not all of them belong to his Slytherin family." Nagini could only nod his head in agreement. "But where is this place? Why am I not in the state of a snake now?" "This is the Misty Realm, a place hidden deep in the soul, where the lost souls and memories are hidden," Shaji said. "I also lost part of my memory, and then I found all of these memories in my own illusion. By the way, my soul was completely completed. So I'm in a soul state now. Yes, this is the part of your soul that is a human being. After you completely turned into a snake, these 10 parts of your soul were permanently sealed in the immortal realm by the blood curse. I have just cleaned up all your soul's curse." Did you do it alone?" "Yeah, I'm enough alone. If there are too many people, it won't work, and it will add to the chaos," Shaji said casually. "But you look so small." "I'm not small at all. I'm strong." Shaji was a little unhappy. As a man, he was called small by others. It was unbearable. "I'm sorry." Nagini apologized immediately. "Don't talk so much. See the fog door in front. When you step out of that door, your soul as a human will merge with your soul as a snake. At that time, your memories will also merge. But this is all temporary. Be careful, it will be very painful during this period, you must persevere. Shaji said very seriously. Nagini nodded, her eyes full of determination. She has been plagued by this blood-cursed orc curse for years, and now she finally has a solution. She's going to stick to it no matter what. Shaji nodded, it is very painful to shape the soul. In other words, the soul is a piece of iron waiting to be forged, and the pain is the flame that softens the iron. Of course, Shaji will also use some means to make her less painful. Are you ready? Coming to the fog door, Shaji just looked at Nagini next to him. Nagini nodded. Shaji took Nagini's hand and took one step forward. As soon as their figures left, the bewildered illusion was rippling and disappeared. Shaji's soul returned to his body in an instant, and Nagini in front of him suddenly raised his snake's head. It's just that she has a snake pupil in one eye, and a human pupil in the other eye. Shaji picked up the wand, and a purple beam shot out, hitting Nagini's head. Dobby, help me tie it up. Dobby nodded, snapped his fingers, Nagini's whole snake froze, and then a lot of ropes suddenly appeared and tied Nagini's body, layer by layer, directly trapped her into a zongzi. Even so, Dobby didn't dare to relax, and worked hard to control his magic power. It has to be said that he is very enthusiastic about his work now. Come on. Shaji's pupils turned dark purple, and he saw the two souls in Nagini's body at a glance. Of these two souls, one is humanoid, while the other is serpentine. The two can't be fused at all, they are only roughly glued together. This should be Nagini's own attempt to fuse just now, but he couldn't do it at all. How can two sections of cold steel billets be fused without heating? The purple beam from Shaji's wand hit Nagini's soul. Roar! Nagini howled in pain, and struggled wildly in pain. Dobby was sweating profusely to maintain his magic power, but he couldn't hold on for long. Nagini's two souls were hit by the purple beam, and they immediately began to melt like heated wax. Shaji was sweating profusely, manipulating the re-merging of the two souls that were actually one. After the successful fusion, heavy enough to start casting transformation while the iron is hot. The soul covered by purple light still has plasticity. Nagini's huddled soul slowly took human form. During this period, Nagini's body was still struggling crazily, it was really painful. Shaji is very familiar with Nagini's human form. He had already seen it clearly when he was in the illusion just now. Although he can't handle it, he believes in his gentleman's gaze, just take a look. Your size is in my heart. Nagini's soul, thanks to the efforts of Shaji's 10 points of transformation, slowly changed back to its original shape, and his body may even be better. Finally, after the complete transformation is over, Shaji suddenly withdrew her soul magic. Nagini's soul gradually stabilized, and Nagini's body stopped struggling. Shaji just wiped himself a sweat, and he signaled Dobby to let go of the restraint. His pupils are still purple, and in his eyes, Nagini's soul has completely transformed into a human form. The shackles were released, and Nagini lifted the snake's head, her eyes gradually changed from blurred to clear, and they were no longer the pupils of the snake. Then she turned her head and looked at Shaji. Now, try to see if you can change back to human form. Shaji said nervously, success or failure depends on it. Nagini nodded, and after a while, her body changed dramatically. Dobby, get some clothes. Shaji ordered. Dobby nodded and disappeared in place. Nagini's long body gradually shortened, and his stout body began to shrink gradually. Like a movie in slow motion, the serpentine Nagini gradually transformed into a radiant beauty. She finally completely changed back to her human form, but maybe because she hasn't stood up for a long time, she is still a little unaccustomed to it and can't stand up. Ahem. Shaji quickly covered his nose with a handkerchief. Then he took off his coat and covered Nagini's body. This scene. Although I've been single for 30 years, I've read countless movies. I don't know what big scene Shaji hasn't seen. Nosebleeds gushing out. Well, the real scene, he has never seen, spoon. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.